listening to the MycoGeeky podcast.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the MycoGeeky podcast, the podcast that goes deep so you can level up your at-home mushroom cultivation game. I'm your host, MycoGeeky. Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here we are. We're about to do this again. I got some great guests tonight. We got Natural State Mycology. His home base is Facebook, but you know he's out and about in a couple other places as well. And then we're after a little bit of a hiatus, we got Ed Gran back on the scene. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's been bugging me and that's been coming up lately in the Discord. So he's going to be back on. That's going to be a good time. Anyway, real quick. Just want to hit that mission statement. We're here to educate and inspire mushroom cultivators and enthusiasts on the art and science of mushroom cultivation while delving into the medicinal, therapeutic, and societal aspects of mushrooms, including discussions on integration therapy, spirituality, and the decriminalization movement. If you guys are here, you already know what's up though, right? All right, quick shout out for all my Patreon supporters. You guys want to support me on Patreon? If you like what I'm doing here and you want to see more of it, consider support me. Just patreon.com/MycoGeeky. If you're on your phone though, you're going to have to search it like on Google. Just search Patreon MycoGeeky and then you'll get a link and you can sign up that way. Anyway, thanks to all my supporters. I got a lot of wonderful supporters on there right now. And I'm just trying to keep evolving, get good guests on here, have good conversations, and we're going to keep doing that. So how about this? Without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Natural State Mycology. All right, what's up? Natural State Mycology in the house. How you doing, man?
Hey, doing good, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. So I have, everybody's always going, have this guy on, have that guy on. And, if somebody messages me and like, who you should have on? You should have on Manna from Heaven. And I'm like, oh, really? Should I? Like, do you know how many fucking times I've asked this guy to be on? Like, trust me, been there, tried that. But then there's another category of people, which is my little gems, the people who I think maybe on a certain platform, some people know, but I think broadly speaking, might be absolutely sleepers, unknown people that I think are doing something special, deserve to be in the space, and that I love keeping an eye on and keeping tabs on. And you are one of those people.
Thank you, man.
I will say to all the people out there that are brand new, getting into this and are enthusiastic and passionate and all that, I'll tell you what's more important than the enthusiasm is doing the work. 100%. Enthusiasm's great, right? Like if you want to be a shredding guitar player, enthusiasm for practice is great, but you got to do that actual practice.
You do, unless you want to be an air guitarist, then you're good. Yeah.
Right. Even then you got to practice. You got to get the wrist just right.
Anything in life, you're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the greatest thing is when the practice, the daily, skill building, all that stuff, when that is married properly with the passion, with the enthusiasm, that's a great recipe for success. And so when you first hit my radar, I was like, okay, this guy's excited about this. Let's see how that pans out. 'Cause there's been lots of people super excited out of the gate and then I don't know what happens to them.
Sure. Fizzles out. Yeah, no doubt.
Whatever. Life happens. But with you, it probably didn't even take me 2 or 3 months. And I'm like, oh, I think I like this guy. This guy he's paying attention. He's asking the right people, the right questions. He seems really like it doesn't take long to figure out who really likes cultivating mushrooms.
It doesn't.
And so, yep. So you got in that category and I've just been like, okay, the time's going to be right here pretty soon. And lately the nagging voice has been like, yeah, it's time for Natural State. We need to get him out here. So anyway, glad to have you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. You're gonna make me blush.
Well, we wouldn't know. You're hiding your cheeks, so we have no idea. But anyway, so a lot of people on Facebook, probably who are in the right groups, probably, have heard of you or seen some of your posts, but Man, we're on YouTube. I got Instagram. I got Discord. I got Reddit. I got, just random dudes in Europe who don't go on any of those things but to shroomery. So why don't you do what we always do, which is talk your Michael origin story, your
Sure.
first mushroom memory. Take us from life without mushrooms to life with mushrooms.
Man, all right. I'm going to try to put this in as short of a nutshell as I can. So, I would say my first interaction with actives was, as most people, 18, 19 years old, 20, somewhere around there. Had them a few times, museum dose, nothing crazy, just fun, right?
Yeah.
And I, as I grew into adulthood, I had experimented with lots of drugs at that age, lots and lots, almost all. Opiates always stuck with me. I was prescribed opiates as a kid for a couple very minor surgeries that they had no business prescribing opiates for.
Right.
And there was always kind of a nagging voice. I even remember at 11 years old, I was prescribed them for a very short duration, but I remember being very excited to get my next pill. The first time was at like 4 or 5 years old. So anyway, not that that's necessarily the cause, but it led me to a severe opiate addiction throughout most of my adult life, on and off. I ended up on methadone because I was at the point where I was using 300 to 400 milligrams of oxy a day, and
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna end up. My wife
Yeah.
was gonna wake up with me dead next to her. So I felt my only choice at that point, not really knowing much about it, was to go to methadone treatment. Um, I did that, and as they introduced me to it, they told me, "Oh, it'll be a year, 6 months, then we'll taper you off." Great, that all sounds good. Not any side effects. You'll be good. Just it's fine. It's better than the alternative, right?
Yeah.
5 years later, I was stuck in this just sort of fog, and I was unaware of it at the time.
Right.
But my little brother brought some mushrooms from Canada, mushroom chocolate bar, and this was a while back. This was actually in December last year, so not that long ago.
Right.
Um, and I ate mushrooms again for the first time since I was a kid, and it was a whole different experience. Of course, it was very much work and was not necessarily comfortable at all that first time. Um, but coming out of it, I was in a very new place in life, and
Right.
ready to take on some new challenges and be done with that phase of life. It's been fascinating.
It really is fascinating how often I hear people say something along that lines of it was a wake up call, or I mean, I know this. I've never gotten drunk or on any sort of narcotic and had the takeaway be I need to get my life in order. Like, there's
Negative.
no wisdom to those drugs. They just feel amazing when you're on them, and then the come down is real bad and makes you want to do more and more and more of them. But okay, so your trip told you here's some homework. We need to do something different.
Yes, yeah, very very much so. And so I kind of dug into that and said, hey, this is great. Like,
Yeah.
it may not have been pleasant in the moment, but I need this, right? Like,
Right.
I suddenly woke up to the fact that my life was stagnant. I was meh. Everything was just
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it was just this realization. I was already probably 3/4 of the way through tapering from 150 milligrams down. So I think I was at like 30 or 40 at that point, maybe.
Okay.
So I was
And now
already
you're talking about off methadone, and that was
correct.
after being on it for 5 years.
Correct.
And who instigated the taper?
Me.
Of
Me and
course.
my wife,
Yeah. Right.
collectively, we do everything
Right.
collectively, but
Right.
yeah, it
It
was,
wasn't them.
yeah, no,
They didn't
no,
go, hey, Natural State, it's time. We told you
no,
it was a year. Nope.
no.
If you had not done that,
No. Oh no. And in fact, just the opposite.
right.
Most clinics that I went to encourage you to stay at the clinic
Of
and
course they
even
do.
up your dose sometimes. Yeah.
Right.
It's I mean,
Now,
oh
to be fair, since I'm on that side, they're looking at data that says, well, the odds are more than half of these. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but a significant portion of people who come off it are pretty likely to go back to the old offending, habitual drug.
Correct.
So they're just scared, right? They don't want to, they just want you fine. And as long as we keep handing you the methadone pill, we're happy, you're happy, everybody's happy, nobody's going to jail, nobody's robbing their mom.
Yep. You got it. Everybody's
But
complacent, everybody follows the rules.
yeah,
Yep.
but nobody gets a chance to make a new decision, get off it. Yeah, it's sad.
It's very sad, man. And I would see, you know, elderly folks coming in there who have been cut off of their meds. So, you know, the whole thing, it's just, there's a lot more to it than just junkies going, you know what I mean? It's not just, it's people, and you know very well. But yeah, that for me was really cool. And then from there, I just kind of, it just launched. I mean, I don't know if you recall, but the first time we spoke, I think was sometime in January, and I hadn't even grown my first cube yet at that point. Yeah, it's just been a wild journey, man. When I get into something, I tend to be very obsessive, and I dig in fully.
I can relate. I can relate to that.
And I think cubes tend to do that, or mushrooms in general, fungi in general, tend to do that with a lot of people, it seems.
Yeah.
Maybe just we all have similar brains. I don't know.
I would be inclined to believe that everybody that finds their way down this rabbit hole is roughly share some similar traits for sure.
Yeah. Seems that way. But yeah, man, so I'm off of methadone. I have been for I lost count after the first week, which I saw as a good thing, that I wasn't even trying. That's
amazing.
Yeah, and I actually dosed myself for the final month. I set aside doses. Probably shouldn't say that, but I set aside doses and dosed myself for the final month. And it just blew my mind that not one time did I have any desire, because I very easily could have, to take more than I should have, and
sure.
And I literally just didn't have any sort of inclination to do so. So that alone for me has just sealed the deal that, man, even just as a catalyst, like you mentioned, it's not even necessarily in like continually eating them, right? As a catalyst for life change, I think this has such big potential.
Right. Now, of course, Big Pharma is not going to like that, because they go, wait a minute. So a drug that at its most successful, you'll do once or maybe once in a blue moon, and then you're just cured.
Yep. They don't want cures.
They do not want. Who? Chris Rock said that in Bigger Blacker, right? He said money's in the medicine.
It is. It is indeed. Yeah. It's a sad thing, man. Yeah.
Well, that's a big accomplishment. I can tell you right now that if you look at the numbers, sure, you might get off heroin, but you're going to be on Suboxone, you're going to be on methadone. And I've taken out in Los Angeles, I can't tell you how many like ex-gangbangers who had been on heroin for 8 to 15 years. And then they're just, they're like 70. And I'm here's your methadone, Mr. Ortega. Here's your methadone, right? Like, and then they're, yeah, man, I used to be on heroin, man. I'm off that shit now, bro. I'm off that. No,
I was one of those.
You're not, dude. You're not off nothing. It's heroin.
It is, man. It might as well be. It hits the exact same. Yeah, it is. I mean, for all intensive purposes. And I was one of those, man. I adamantly said, no, it's not. People, it's synthetic heroin. No, it's not. Oh, I'm clean. No. And once you come out of that fog, that's when you realize, oh my gosh, I was messed up that whole time. You just don't know, because it's the norm,
it's like how high functioning an alcoholic can be, right? Like me, if I get shit-faced drunk, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. I'm not an alcoholic.
I haven't touched a drop in years.
If you're a pro alcoholic, you can go to work and you gotta get right up on them, right? I mean, sometimes they get a little look to them. There's a look, but they get real good at being absolutely obliterated drunk and still functional.
They do.
So there's that tolerance and that comfortability, but you did it. You got out of it. I mean, the biggest step is just getting over that hump of getting off it.
It is. It really is.
Really the secret.
That was the anxiety-ridden part for me, was the thought of how bad is this going to be? What might it be like? And once I did it with the help of cannabis and fungi, man, a few sleepless nights and some sweat later, I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. So just another, hey, for you viewers, another amazing story of something that's supposed to have no medicinal value whatsoever, somehow working as better medicine than anything that the FDA has ever approved. Go figure.
Imagine that.
How's that work out? So fascinating. All right, so yes, I didn't I couldn't remember if I met you as you were doing your first grow or if you had not yet started growing yet. I do
I had
recall
started.
I recalled you rubbed me as the kind of guy who wanted to get it all figured out first, so you just knock it out of the park, on your first go. And so I think you did.
Thank you.
So
I
yeah,
tried.
before we get into the early grows though, I want to do this. A lot of people don't know you. Um, I want to just hit like a highlight reel. I want to see all the cool stuff you've done
Sure.
in what are we approaching a year? Are we a little over a year? Where are we at?
Man, to be completely honest, no, we're only at 7 months.
All right. So guys, if you haven't started growing yet, take note. This is, I mean,
It
I
can
did
be
it
done.
too. I got real good real fast. It can be done.
It
All you
can.
got to do is listen to good advice from people. So it's not even to my credit necessarily, other than when people are giving you solid advice, take it and run with it. All
Yep.
right. So let's pull these up here. I'm going to pull off the overlay.
And good genetics.
Never hurts. Never hurts. All
Yeah.
right. So speaking of notoriously wonderful cultigens,
Tap black cap. Got some
can't
tap
hate it.
black.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And that was some third flush tap black cap. Some real major weirdos there. I still have yet to run these clones. In the process of moving and getting my new lab set up. So that should be within the next week or so. I actually should be in there, and I'll have some videos coming out. But yeah, those are some really interesting ones that pop. Those are my favorites out of my tap black cap grows.
Well, I can tell you this. I tried to grow it, or, in the realm of grow time that you're in. And I think I failed 3 times. And then it wasn't until I grew Ghost that ended up ultimately sort of evolving into Tap Black Cap that I
Sure.
actually grew it. So that you grew, sure, a tribute to some genetics, but also obviously you're doing something right here.
More tap black cap there. And thank you. More tap black cap there. That was first flush, I believe, or second.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. I really liked that big fruit in the back there, the way that
Yeah,
rolled.
that's a big boy.
It is, and there's an even bigger boy, a little shorter but chonkier for
Yeah.
sure. Same thing, tap black cap there. I still have not been brave enough to look at those under the microscope, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they are supposedly.
You got to take a long look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I.
It's a real hard look.
That's what I hear. Yeah. That is.
Damn, dude.
Actually,
So yeah, walk us through how you got this too. Is this multispore?
no. This is a clone, believe it or not. So
What?
this is bananas, man. So okay, so this was a clone from my very first cube grow ever. It was Nutcracker,
Okay.
and I cloned 2 fruits. Right, one was these 2 sisters mirroring each other. That's what this one was. I labeled it Nutcracker Gemini. I sent a sample of that clone to a dude named Myco Buddy over on Facebook. He's been chasing another Nutcracker mutation. Sent that to him. He grew it out, and this is what popped. And literally, those are reverts, full, all the way back to Golden Teacher.
Right.
Those are literally growing out of those little Nutcracker squats. He sent me I'll have to send it to you later, but yeah, it's one of them just literally coming right out of the side. Just blows the mind, right? I mean,
You got it. Yeah, you got just a bunch of clusters of Superman, but around there you got a couple Clark Kents just popping out. Just got to go back to business as usual. Yep.
You do indeed. Yeah,
Nice.
they said we're done with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lucid Gates. And
shout out to the homie James Cruz. Look at that. That is a beautiful specimen. It's fascinating when the tub goes, we're just doing one this time, guys.
Yep.
We're just doing one big boy for you.
That was a 6-quart.
Yeah.
So, after talking to James, he was like, yeah, the Gates stuff really likes big tubs. So next time I'm going to have to do it justice and run it in big tubs. But I thought that was pretty cool too. It said, nope, no others are growing.
Yeah, I mean, so that is worth mentioning, like when I had FUNGUY, the good FUNGUY on, and, all his genetics well stabilized in bags. So I had a lot of people go, oh, finally a vendor who, I grow in bags. I want stuff that's already used to bags.
Sure.
Great. You found your guy. Now, if you grow in tubs, especially large tubs, and you want to fill those tubs, James definitely can help you figure that out. Yes.
Yes, he can.
But this is cool too, man. I mean, if I could control it right, that's the fruit I want to swab anyway.
Right, and that's exactly what I did. This was second flush, actually. First flush through 3 that were taller than that, but not as chonky, and I just didn't like the morphology as much. But yeah, that one I thought was it was a really neat one. I liked it. That was my first lucid grow, so I had fun with it. Yeah, that's the same fruit, lucid again.
Other side.
Yep. And I guess just for anybody that doesn't know, lucid is James's cross of his 𝐜𝐸𝐤 cross with pearly gates, I believe. Correct? Yeah.
That's correct. Yep.
Stunning work. They throw some of the most beautiful fruits I've seen to date. Yeah.
And they work.
They
work under the microscope.
That they do. They do. Still that same fruit.
Old liquid death. My kids get such a kick out of that drink, dude.
And if liquid death is watching, holla.
Oh yeah, they're not watching. They might be. Who knows? I don't know.
Love me some liquid death. Those are some pearly gates squats that popped up third flush. Thought those were some really cute little squatty guys. So I'm working those as we speak.
Nice.
Yeah. That is Blue Storm Buddha cut. That's a Dirty South Mycology creation. And that is Blue Vuitton crossed with Stormtrooper.
Nice.
Yeah, just kind of a mean looking fruit there. That's Moloko Velocit. That is Long Ghost crossed with Moloko Plus by Julian Matucci.
Nice. Those look great. I like those.
Thank you, man. That was actually
the cluster too, man. You better please tell me you clone that. Okay.
Oh, of course, of course. Yes, that's actually the main clone that I'm running with is that cluster clone right there. Yeah, nice. That was a T1 from Swab that run, and that was second flush, but every flush they're stunning fruits. It's a beautiful one. One of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I think his Blue Ghost and the Long Ghost are both really exceptional looking cultigens. Yeah,
they are
both.
They are. Yeah, that's Leucistic Blue Magnolia Rust, and I believe that cut of it came originally from Dirty South Myco, but I got a clone from my buddy Sir Jackalope on Instagram, yeah, that's what I got. Another 6-quart. I run almost all 6-quart or 1-gallon jugs. The 1-gallon jugs I've started to kind of phase out. I'm preferring 6 quarts these days. Just a little more variety. It seems that the gallon jugs really kind of make it where it's like that's all you get,
Right.
That's been my hesitancy with bags too, but yeah, that was a really fun one. Really pretty fruits. The stipes had this awesome striping to them.
I see that. Yeah, I mean, it kind of looks cool, man.
Yeah, very neat ones. I think that's more Leucistic Blue Magnolia Rust, LBMR. Yeah.
Like it.
Yep. There we've got some Country Cock. Can I say that?
You just did, dude.
Hey, it happened.
I mean,
some country. And that one is by Jason Wilson, I believe. And it's Hillbilly crossed with PE. Penis envy.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, it's for a little grow along we did over in my Discord server. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed watching those grow. They were a really neat one to see.
Yeah, man, I love anytime you get the real bumpy stipe.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, the bumpy stipe tends to always be like a top half of the stipe trait, whereas this is interesting. It's really kind of the entire stipe is that way.
It was fairly uniform. Yeah, I found that interesting as well. Yeah, these were really cool fruits, man. I believe this was almost certainly a clone culture just based on the way the tub kind of came out. But I'm very excited to run the spores from that guy right there. That's getting sent next round. So yeah, yeah,
Very cool.
it was a fun one. Yeah.
Country cock, guys.
Yes, sir.
Gotta
That
get you
is.
some country cock. I don't care your sexual orientation. There you go.
Yeah,
No
I'm
shame
as
in that.
hetero as they come, but I love me
There you go.
some fungi poopies. Uh, so that is Shakti.
Yeah.
That was my first attempt at Shakti, and I was really excited about it. It was my second or third grow, I want to say. I was
Okay.
so excited, just watching the tub like we all do, and I woke up one morning and bump, ba-dum, boom, trick, and
I see it. I see it back there.
Yep.
Photobombing. Yep.
Yep, you can see it there to the right.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, so I ended up letting them go another day. I was advised, hey, you can let it run a little longer. So I did, and man, to my shock, I ended up getting 140-gram fruit. Uh,
Nice.
yeah, and so that's something that I've heard said a lot. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but that a lot of the time contamination can force out some of those maybe stronger or weirder genetics, or genetic lines. So yeah, I don't know if that's what happened here, but I'll take it. It was a beautiful fruit, and I think I've got more shots of that same fruit in the next. That one there in the back left.
So full transparency. Shakti don't like me. That's the. I
Oh,
mean, I figured out pretty much all of them. Usually succeed these days. I just had somebody else send me. They had put it in cold storage and hadn't worked it for a year, but they sent me what was their just their ultimate well isolated and worked Shakti blue brains. I should say that. Let me say that again. I have had no success with Shakti blue brains, and
okay.
everybody else grows these amazing Shakti blue brains,
Oh, they're
and I'm
gorgeous. Yeah,
just dying to do it, and I can't. That's still one of my golden gooses I have not pulled off.
man,
I have not
blueberries.
run Shakti, though. I think because I've had such bad luck with Shakti blue brains, I'm hesitant to even. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, I give up, but I
yeah.
won't someday.
It's easy to get that way with one when you're
Yeah.
like, oh, it's just a variant of that same one. And it's hard to like. I struggle with that so much with like choosing what I'm gonna run next. That's probably my greatest struggle, man. Is like, which one am I running next? And I've gotten to the point where I almost don't even want to run existing dicarion cultures anymore. Like,
I hear you. I hear
you
you.
know it's hard, man. The struggle is real, but yeah, that's that same fruit. I
Yep.
just thought that cap coloration and shape were
Looks
just,
amazing.
yeah,
Looks
just
amazing.
stunning, man. I loved it. uh and that knot on the stipe, just everything about it, man.
And
Yeah,
guys, just in case so how many months into growing are you at this point?
at this point, I would say no more than 2 to 3 months.
Look at that, 100-gram club. Within a few months.
Yep, it's
That's
doable.
very
It's doable
impressive.
for
Yep.
anybody. Yeah, you just
Yep.
you just gotta put the work in, like you
Yep.
said. Yep, that's right.
All
That's
right.
Pearly Gates.
This is some good looking pearly gates.
Yeah, first attempt at Pearly Gates. I was pretty thrilled with it. Now I will say my subsequent flushes were no bueno. It was rough. I did too high of a spawn ratio on this, so I think I did like probably close to a 1 to 1.5 spawn to sub.
For the
Uh,
one pictured here,
yes,
and then
yes.
subsequent ones, did you change that or?
I have not run Pearly Gates again since. I meant
Oh, okay,
subsequent
okay.
flushes. Sorry,
Oh,
subsequent
subsequent flushes.
flushes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
Well,
first
yeah, dude, when
flush.
you bang it out on the first flush like that, I mean, don't expect much.
Yeah,
I
it did
mean,
not have much left to give after that. Yeah.
honestly, unless you just are the type that just, like it's not a cheapskate move, but it's like, gosh darn it, I'm gonna go for 1 year and get 19 flushes out of this cake. If you're that way, cool. Play the how many flushes can I get game. But for me, if that first flush is just wow,
Primo.
it's
Yeah.
done. Bye
Yep.
bye.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to be one, so I was raised not to ever like we didn't throw leftovers away until
Sure.
they smelled bad. right?
Right.
Like that was just how I
Right.
was raised. So it's really hard for me to toss a tub if it's
Right.
still pushing out fruit. So
All
I tend
right.
to
So there
go.
we go. Now you guys know Natural State is he plays the how many flushes game. There we go. That's cool. Hey, you get more swabs, right?
Now,
Get
I
more
wouldn't say how
swabs.
many flushes, but I go to 2 to 3. That's where I
Okay.
draw the line. Is
Okay.
two or second or third, and if it's not doing anything wonky, it goes out.
Yeah.
But even that, I feel like is pushing it because, like you said, I mean, how many do you need? You know?
Man, I don't even care if you sell this stuff. Like, I don't even care if you're selling fruit, but if you're growing and selling fruit in bulk and you find that you're not running an excess, then you're not a good grower yet. Because
It,
I'm running bare minimum everything, and
same,
it's a lot of fruit. It
same.
just ends up being a lot of fruit. If you really enjoy cultivation, I don't care how, you can I got the tiny Dave Wombat tubs. I don't run 20 or 32 quarts at all anymore. I've never run 66 quarts. I'm running shoe boxes. I'm running bags, which
Yep.
are essentially similar footprint anyway.
Yeah.
And short runs, I'm not doing multiple flushes. I'm just can't give it away fast enough.
Man,
It's just
I'm
too much.
trying my first bag. I don't know if you can see it up here behind me. I'm trying my first bag fruiting right now. I've been spawning in
Oh,
bags.
top left there.
Yeah, right up here. Yep.
Oh, I see it over there. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And liquid culture, which I've never been a huge fan of either.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of my two, my two.
Tick
Yeah,
in the box.
yeah, checking the boxes
Yeah.
there. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, look, if shoe boxes are working and you're not having contamination issues, you're good.
Yep.
You're great.
Yeah.
They stack. There's that.
Yeah.
If at any point you start getting contamination issues, man, hard to hate bags.
That's what I hear. That's what
Yeah.
I hear. Yeah, that's kind of the main draw is just, hey, it's sealed up. You're not going to get any stuff coming in by the wayside. So yeah, I do like that. I'm excited to see how it turns out. And I've seen so many epic bag grows lately. I mean, I was like, I can't not try it. You know, it's but something about putting dirt into my spawn bags, I just couldn't bring myself to do it for the longest time. Something about that just seems wrong to me.
Yeah, but so okay, I sterilize my sub. A lot of people do. If you don't, I'm not
I
telling you
don't.
to do
Buckets.
whatever you want to do. But if you sterilize your sub, you're going to do it in XLSA bags or whatever grow bags you're using anyway. It's already there.
That makes sense.
It's already in there. All I'm doing, it's too easy. I do a big run of my substrate bags. They sit on the shelf. When I'm ready to use them, I dump a quart of spawn in, twist it, shake it, pack it down, done. It's like, it's too easy. And then am I cleaning it out afterwards? No, okay, if I get a good flush and and the cake is really strong.
Sure.
I will literally hustle the cake out of the bag, set it on some paper towel in front of the flow hood, harvest, squiggle it back in there. With the bags, I'm more likely to try to get a second flush. With the tubs, it's too much work anyway. I'm like, okay, just go. I mean, shit, dude. I used to clean contaminated tubs. Those tubs are $1.50 at Walmart. You know what? If it's contaminated, it goes straight in the freaking garbage. I don't even clean that shit.
You know, I was that way with the tubs until I realized UV light can kill a lot of that stuff. You know, we set our contaminated cakes outside, and what happens? The TAM goes away most of the time, right?
Sure.
At least visibly. I'm sure it's still there in the soil, but it's not thriving anywhere. It doesn't seem to.
Oh no, it's not. I mean, trichoderma's not eating plastic, so.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, my thoughts have been just, and I've had great luck with this. I haven't had any issues so far, but just setting my tubs, as long as they're not like covered in stuff, right? Like if it was just a little bit of TAM, I saw it, tossed the cake out. I set it out in the sun for a couple days, and then I spray them with ISO, and it's good. I haven't had a single issue that way.
See, I just don't like doing all that work. So Look, I'm not getting contamination that much anymore, so I'm not just throwing out these plastic tubs willy nilly. But I've had a couple times where I'm like, "Yep, okay, that was just going in the garbage. I'm never opening it. I'm not. No, I try to be like very practical about that stuff.
Sure.
I know people that are washing their grow bags and then reusing. Nah, it's not me. I'm not. I'm not the reason. I didn't cause the environmental catastrophe we're in. It is not my fault. It's not your fault. It's major corporations' fault. They need to fix what they're doing. Whatever I do is not going to fix the problems we have. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I get if you can't sleep at night and all you think about is your microplastics and
you do you. Yeah.
You do you. Yep. But
my part is in reusing these 1 gallon jugs as many times as I can. That's my effort.
Yeah, plus they work, so
they work great. Yeah, they're awesome. You can use just about anything, I've come to realize. Anything that has that right shape to it.
You can literally.
It doesn't even really have to have the shape, to be honest.
If it's non-permeable and you can functionally you can make it work, that is all you got to do.
Absolutely.
Hold on 1 second here.
Sure.
All right, let's keep going here. So I got a new computer, got a notification. I don't have those turned off yet. All right,
that's
so
okay.
Got more pearly gates.
So yeah, that same tub, just a wider shot. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there we've got some stacks. So this is an interesting one.
Oh yeah.
This was again before I had my first cube grow. I acquired some stacks that I was consuming. Right. This was a long while back. Previous. And so stacks, for anybody that doesn't know, is albino Kozomai super squat zombie from Dave Wombat, crossed with Stormtrooper, which is an albino tidal wave isolation.
Yep.
By Dirty South Myco, and this
revert, right? I think it's reverted, but
it may be. Yep. I want to say.
But yeah, that's Stormtrooper, man. That's a new albino Avery's. That's the new. It's man, awesome. It crosses with a lot of stuff, and it gives it vigor.
It does.
And
it does.
Mean, look at that. That's
dude,
pretty great.
Well, so the coolest part about this is that I got it from a dried fruit cluster. So I cloned a dried fruit cluster, and again, this was before I had grown any cubes. I was just doing agar work at this point, waiting on grain to colonize, and yeah, that's what I got out of it. That was my first run after cleaning it up. It took me ages to clean up. Had to send it to water agar twice. It was a learning process. It was a huge learning process, but well worth it. I think I enjoyed that.
Well, see, that's interesting. You had a problem, you had a challenge. Some people go to water agar. If it didn't solve the problem, they'd go, "Oh, water agar doesn't work." Well, out of that water agar growth, find the cleanest. Still, maybe not the best looking, but find the best looking, cleanest, dirty part of that culture you can find. Do water agar again. You keep playing that game. There's a good chance eventually you will give the mic enough chance to outrun that bacteria, and you can get a real nice, dry, pretty little transfer, and then you're back in business.
You betcha. And I take teeny tiny transfers, so it doesn't take much. Yeah.
Play the odds, definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right, there it is again. Just
that's a 6 quart of it. So I ran those side by side just for comparison. 1 gallon jug, 6 quart from the same spawn bag. I just split it, so that's identical. And that same.
Yeah, man, that's just like great. All right, what we got here?
That's some Starry Night Ape.
Look at that.
Yeah, and that's my first time running it, and it performed really well. That's another Dirty South Myco. That's who I got that Starry Night Ape from. Dude's just got great genetics, and so that I attribute most of my success early on to great genetics.
Well, that is very nice and humble of you to do. I agree. Genetics are major, contributing factor. But dude, you're 7 months in, you're growing Starry Night, Pearly Gates, Apes, Shakti, like you're Nutcracker. You're definitely here to learn and to try things out and to figure out, this whole game. So it's very impressive.
Thank you.
So again, guys, if you're just joining us, we're here with Natural State Mycology. His home base is Facebook, though he is on many other platforms. Those will all be available in the description below. Facebook. Let's talk just a quick second. I don't want to beat a dead horse on here, but it's your home base.
It is. It is.
But boy, it's a messy house.
It's
how
like
do
a
you
dysfunctional
how do you
family.
navigate? Now I know you. I think I know how you do it, but tell everybody else how you make Facebook work and you don't succumb to the
Sure. I can I
stuff.
can I can do that. Yeah. So essentially my approach always in life has been very much one of avoid stress and drama. Those
I like
things,
it.
I feel like those things are worse for us than a lot of the things we fuss about in the environment and that companies put in our food and water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stress is very harmful. So
Cortisol's a killer.
it
Oh
is
yeah, those
truly.
increased cortisol level. You want to do anything you can to reduce your baseline cortisol levels.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And so my whole life, that's kind of been my approach. And part of that was part of what led to me being severely addicted to opiates, right? Was
Right.
I wanted to be numb and not have to deal with stress.
Right.
So it's interesting. That's kind of become a different, the taken a different approach to that, if you will. What was the question again? I kind of went on a tangent
Yeah,
there. So
just how you it can be very easy to get on Facebook. I can't literally every
sorry.
day somebody's going, "Yeah, I got
Yeah,
to get off Facebook, guys. I can't do this
Facebook.
anymore. It's killing me."
Facebook. So yeah, so essentially what it was for me coming in as someone fresh, right? I didn't have any background on any of these people. It was
Right.
literally fresh set of eyes, which
Right.
most people coming in probably are, but there are a lot of people I've noticed who seem to watch and observe before entering, right? They kind of
Sure.
get the lay of the land. I did not do that.
Right.
Jumped right in both feet. And yeah, that was really it in a nutshell, was just not succumbing to temptations of commenting on things that I didn't have personal knowledge of, or that I didn't have
Right.
any dog in that fight, so to speak, right? Like if I'm not involved in that, why should I dip my toe in those waters?
Right.
There could be sharks, you know.
So you fundamentally have the skill set required to have longevity on Facebook, which is you just don't inherently look for fights and argue with people and tell people they're wrong and piss people like yeah. So
That, and I try to
yeah.
be kind to everybody, and unless they're unkind to me, and even still, usually they're just gonna get a block and a bye bye. Yeah, yeah, you know.
Every, everything you fight, you make stronger.
Yep, this is true.
Everything you talk about, you give credence to.
You do.
Like, yeah, Dave Wombat recently had a post saying, "Hey guys, we talking about all these bad accounts all the time. I wonder if we're not maybe like giving the algorithm, helping them get more attention than they deserve. Maybe they're getting recommended to more people because they're coming up, they're being talked about. I don't know if that's true, but I definitely, if you're bad news, I leave you be.
Yep.
I got nothing to do with you.
Same.
Quick pro tip: if you're new and you're on Facebook and somebody DMs you who you don't know, and all they say is "hello, how are you doing," block that dude. That dude's about to sell you drugs or scam you. That is all that's happening there.
Yep. Yep.
No random human being on Facebook is
Says
messaging you
hello.
out of the blue because they want to form a true, deep friendship with you.
No. No.
Yeah.
And there may be those rare ones that you might miss because of that, but
And they're gonna get
okay.
blocked. That's okay.
Yep. It's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
You'll connect with plenty of people. Don't worry.
Or they'll persist and
Yeah, or they'll learn
eventually,
not to
yeah.
just message someone out of the blue
Yep.
and say hello, because yeah,
Hello, man.
have some sort
That's
of like, hey, I like your mushrooms that you just posted.
uh,
Hi, you know, something.
yeah.
Yeah.
The
No,
scariest DM you can get, guys, is just a single hello.
hello.
Run for the hills.
Yep.
All right, so we got a nice little smattering, little visual walkthrough of your first roughly 7 months here in mycology.
Sure.
Now let's go all the way back. First grow. I think this will be good to show.
Yep.
All right. So just like everybody, right? You started with a simple, easy to grow fruit, I see.
My first grow was Nutcracker.
You're cracking me up.
And it was in a 1-gallon jug, and as you can see, I botched the liner horrifically. I took duct tape. I thought at the time, hey, a liner, right? It's on the edges of the tub. I'm going to adhere it to the edges of the tub so I don't have to mess with it.
Right.
What I didn't realize is your liner is supposed to adhere to the cake and shrink with it as it as it pushes out fruits and loses mass. So yeah, it still worked somehow. The cake shrunk, and I guess just due to the environment that it was in with that 1 gallon jug, it was still able to
It's all
fruit
good.
pretty good. Yeah. So that's as it was fruiting. That's just kind of that was my first kind of, sorry, there we go. That was kind of like just my first experience of seeing actives
Right.
as they were maturing.
All right. So
Really,
real quick, how did it feel? The first
oh my
first
God.
grow you had, I tell everybody, if you have any consumable fruit from your very first tub, you have succeeded.
Yes, and oh my gosh, I was over the moon, man. Like exactly what you just said. I had expected no more than 1 to 2 measly fruits at best, if that. I figured, like most, I would have some failures and then some success, right?
Well, that's a mature outlook. That is, I don't think how everybody goes, I feel like everybody wants a full canopy out of the gate. So that was a very right-sized expectation. But no,
I was blown away with it. I thought
this is
I was
great.
I was very happy with it.
Because it's also not a tub filling variety necessarily. It likes
Not
to be a
really.
little weird.
It does.
If you repeatedly clone and isolate and all that, you can get it to behave a little more
A little. Nutcracker is it's got to be, maybe because it was my first, I don't know, but it's just 𝐦𝐸 hit a home run with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a fuzzy picture of when it's in the gallon jug, right?
That's in the gallon jug, just a side shot. I don't even know why I sent that one. I think
it's great because I would point out that we got wonderful condensation, which is a sign that you're maintaining at least 90% humidity in there. Looks like you got the perfect grow environment.
Yep. Those are my first two, what I called at the time. I still think those look pretty dang good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are my first two nice agar plates, and that I could actually post and be like, hey, I got a good clean ropey culture, and that was another really big, for me, that was a really big accomplishment because it took a while to get there.
Nice. So is this Dirty South's ghost?
It is.
I'm interpreting your hieroglyphs correct? Okay.
It is. Yes, my handwriting is atrocious. For anyone who has received mail from me, you will know my handwriting is it's difficult to decipher at times. But yeah, that is.
It's all good, dude. I will tell you this. I went from I know what marker you use, get the extra fine tip.
I did. Already did.
Okay, so you've made that step.
I
Great.
have.
Now you got all the important stuff. You got the variety, you got the source, you got the media type, you got the transfer number, and you got a date.
Yep. I try to overwrite on my plates. I do it on the back now just for aesthetic purposes, but yeah, I mean, I try to include any and all information, especially with clones, spore runs. It's just it becomes pretty important.
Is it a clone? Yes or no? Is it an in vitro pin clone? Is it? Yeah. Any of that little information matters. When you start doing breeding projects, now you got to keep track of monokaryon numbers. Yep. All put it all there. Everything you don't put down, you will forget.
Oh yeah. You better believe. Yep. Yeah. It's gone the next day. That is that same Nutcracker jug grow. Yep.
Cool little gill, a little upskirt gill shot there.
Yep.
Those are great, man. How heavy was that biggest fat fruit there?
I may have sent you a picture with it on the scale, but I believe both of those clusters were in the like 50 to 60 gram range. That one was my biggest.
Yeah. Solid.
I didn't send those, sorry. But yeah, they were in that range. They were like 50. I think one was like 65 and one was 54, somewhere in that ballpark. But they were dense. Yeah, very dense fruits. Those were my first clones that I ever did. Were those two pairs there? Yeah.
Okay, now I have a question because I can't not see it.
Go for it.
Do you have your spore swabs resting precariously on the lip of your flow hood that I am sure is not sterile? Okay.
I sure did, man. You better believe it.
Please tell me you put it in a mug or a cup or something now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now I have. after that, that was my first time ever swabbing, right?
Yeah.
I think I took
Yeah,
like
you
8
just didn't
swabs.
think about it, so you had to put it somewhere.
I did. I just didn't
Honestly,
think about it. I was already mid swab, and I was like,
Sure.
"Oh my gosh, they got to go somewhere, and this
Yeah.
is better than on the flat
Yeah.
surface, right?" So,
Mhm.
so yeah, they weren't touching, but they were. It was too close to be.
One wrong move, brother. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I tossed a couple sets because of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Now that's what separates the you know, I don't want to say the men from the boys, but yeah, what separates the men from the boys is if you, as you're swabbing, if you accidentally touch that swab on something, you gonna man up and throw it out, or you gonna just try to let it ride? Don't do that, man. Just
It costs
don't
pennies.
do
Costs
that.
pennies.
Yeah,
Just toss it.
just
Toss
toss
it.
it.
Yep. It's
Don't
not
do
worth
that
your
to people.
reputation either. That's the big
It's not
thing.
worth your reputation. It's the golden rule.
Yep.
Is that the swab you want to get?
No, it is not.
Only, man, everything I send out, I people all the time. Oh man, packaged well. Oh, you care about it. Oh, this looks great. Oh, none of your swabs ever contaminate. I
Thank-
just send out what I want to get because, man, in the beginning, I did trades with people, and some of those packages, I'm like, I
Oh,
can't believe you sent this to me.
yeah. Yeah. There are
Yeah.
definitely some stuff comes out there, poking out of the envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can get a little dicey sometimes. That's for sure.
All right. So first grow,
First one.
nutcracker.
Yep.
And you already know to swab your fruits. You already know to clone them. This is the new era we're in, shroomery people who don't like any new people. People just know more now. We got
Well,
the
there's more of
MycoGeeky.
us, I think. There's more of us
Yes.
passing along the knowledge.
And there's more people not gatekeeping.
Yep.
There's more people sharing the information. They're not scared. They're not like, well, if I tell people this, I'm not going to make any money. No. This is just sharing info. So out of the gate, you're just doing all the things you're supposed to do.
Well, the beautiful thing is no one's going to be better than anyone because it's not us producing these anyway. We're just doing the same work. We're all doing the same thing, right? It's the fungi. It's the mic. That's
100%. All right, so we saw first grow. Now I think we're going to go to this is second grow.
That's the initial clone run of that first grow.
Okay, so that fruit, those little chunks you cloned that you took out of the stipe.
The big fat one. That was the big fat ball shaped one. Yep, the big.
And I would say an absolute improvement in yield, an improvement in the caps are more gnarly, on the stipes are fatter, on every level. That seemed to be a good. I would be super happy with.
Oh, I was over the moon, man, and that anemone thing in the middle. You'll see, I guess, in the latter pictures, but subsequent flushes that repeated for second and third flush almost through the whole tub.
Gorgeous.
So yeah, I was pretty excited about that. And there is a similar nutcracker mutation. I mentioned Myco Buddy earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He's taken a hiatus for a little bit, I believe, but he was chasing something pretty similar, and we found out his genetics came from Dirty South as well. So whatever cut of nutcracker Dirty South had at that time was, either mutated or ready to mutate, and it seems to be holding fairly stable in subsequent runs. So those are pretty neat too. I liked those little guys, and I sent you a clone of that big one in the next picture. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yep. This one
right there. Yep.
Nice.
Yep. Yeah. More of that same run. I was just blown away by the diversity for a clone run. Like that's just nutcracker, I guess.
Yeah, I tell you what, when I had FUNGUY Mycology on, and he had all the photo evidence of like, here's the fruit that I cloned from, here's what my flushes look like, and through like multiple cloning processes and flushes. I mean, it never really clicked in my head. I guess you sort of forget the fruit you cloned from unless it's like insanely unique or memorable.
Sure.
And so it never really just clicked in my head. Like, oh, okay, so sometimes you can clone and it does what you want it to do, and then other times it'll do,
whatever.
Like I just cloned something because the fruit looked perfect, but then now my clone run and they look weird.
Yep.
And then the weird fruit I cloned that I expected weirdos from, they're looking real consistent. So like, unless you document that stuff, you just know you don't know.
Yeah,
You know what you're
and that's
doing.
it. To tag on to that, it's another reason why I think people harp so much on why things need to be worked before they're released. At least worked a
Yeah.
bit, you
Yeah.
know, worked from spore and worked from clone to ensure that that's going to be, at least most of those traits are going to remain semi-stable, right? Like,
Right.
I get it. You know, I can
Yeah.
understand why people get frustrated with that. Yeah.
Well, so especially if you are taking, and this will go back to some old vendors, I'm not going to name names, but there were people that had amazing photos.
Sure.
They were doctored, they were color enhanced, and they were so easy to fall in love with. And you go, well, that's what I want. I want to grow that. And you buy it and you don't grow it. And that's disappointing. Now,
It is.
if you're buying from Dave Wombat and he's like, hey, this is unstable, this is crazy, this is what this batch looked like, I don't have a problem with F1, F2 spores as long
No.
as you say you're a part of the process now.
Truth in
You're
advertising.
right.
Yeah.
This isn't a you're going to get this photo. This is we're working on this project. It's a lot of work to work these genetics. Hey man, for super cheap or no money, let's get it out there and let's have you start working it.
Agreed. Agreed. I think that's needed. Yeah.
Yeah, because really, truthfully, you can be the Wizard of Oz. You can toil long into the night behind the curtain until finally you can pull the curtain back and dazzle the masses. That is fine. That is a way to do it. But especially if you got a lot of breeding projects, there's a point where
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't work. And I know you're an example of this. My buddy Jeff Karras is an example of this. There's a lot of people now where you're hearing these stories of really great cultigens happened from people working together, sharing early filial generation spore swabs, taking turns growing stuff out, and cool stuff seems to be happening from that. So I love that process too. But yes, if you are trying to play the here's what I got, do you want it? Yeah, it should be stable. It should have a
Yep.
minimum of 6 to 10 grows. I
Yep.
think most experienced growers are saying like around 9.
Yeah.
That
That's, I
they
mean,
feel.
honestly, that makes sense. You know, seeing what
Yeah.
these do run to run, especially like we just talked about, even from clone, you can get some pretty wonky stuff.
Oh yeah.
Let alone from spore, as we all, as most of
Yeah.
us know, you know, yeah.
And then
But
out of the blue, you can think it's
yeah.
stable, and then
Yeah.
can just say, nope, I'm not though.
Yep.
And you don't. Yeah, you just
Well, I
don't.
mean, Toke's an example of that, right? Tim worked
Perfect
it
example of that.
for years, and even still, you're seeing some Toke grows here and there that are reverting to like B plus, or they're just doing wonky things that
Right.
weren't necessarily the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't control nature. We can try.
Right. But now to me, it's all about the presentation of it. So, for example, if you, again, this is what Dave does well, he says, look, this is not stable. I
Yep.
don't know what you're going to get. I'll show you pictures of the tub that these swabs came from or my latest grow. As long as you're clear about that, it's the minute you go look at this set of 5 photos and everybody wants to grow that. Now, what I grew, I grew a couple tubs of it. I was pretty happy. It didn't look as good as the super pretty amazing pictures, but I'm like, these guys have been growing this for probably 10 or more filial generations. They've had multiple people in the TAC group growing it out. And
Surely.
so the pictures are then the best examples of those fruits, of course. So I wasn't mad at anybody. I thought I got what I thought I was going to get. I expected the variability. Maybe, I mean, I didn't do any of that growing. Maybe in hindsight, it probably would have been smart to go, this is a wild, unstable variety. Sometimes it behaves, sometimes it doesn't. It
Sure.
definitely seems to like tubs more than bags, is what I've been seeing. And it's probably one of those cultures that even if you just grow it from spore and then do one clone, you've probably already dramatically improved it just doing one clone run. So
100%.
yeah, so it's
100%.
all about what's communicated, out of the gate, set expectation appropriately, and then nobody gets mad, right? You just don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. It's better to
Truth in advertising, man. That's what
yeah,
it comes down to. If you're going to put something out there, make sure you're transparent about it.
exactly.
Or if you want to have a good reputation,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I will say this. when the hype was so real, since we're going on the toke tangent, the
Sure.
hype was so real, and I'm just in my head going, I wonder what he's going to charge for these. I mean, we're just talking about these, and we're seeing the pictures, and then we're not getting it released and all that stuff.
Sure.
And when he came out, $25 a swab set, I was just like,
Done. Yeah.
that's the tap price. You did exactly. I mean, I really appreciated that. I respected that a lot.
Yeah. Me
Um,
too.
I don't know if you've grown it or if you've tried it, but it is a special cultigen.
I haven't
just
tried
tell
it
you
yet.
right
I
now.
have grown it, and it actually survived. So my initial toke, I got toke F8, and my initial run, I just tossed about a week ago, and it was 2.5 months old in the tub. It finally started pushing out fruits after heat shocking and cold shocking this little 6 quart.
Right.
And then slime mold pops up in the tub, and it still pushed out, I think, 2 more fruits after that. So strong genetics. I
Yeah.
mean, and yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
I mean, yo, that mycelia will come up and frickin' punch you in the face. It
Oh,
is,
yeah, yeah, no
it
doubt.
is not nice.
Yeah,
But it's so funny because it rips through grain and then it takes a sweet old time in sub. So
it's
just
slow.
no
Yeah,
no rhyme or reason. A lot of stuff does that.
it
The
does.
the the basic ass cubes, right? If they're fast on grain, they're gonna be fast in the tub. Some of these weird things that have been worked to death, um, they can act one way on grain, they can act another in sub. So
Absolutely,
that does happen.
they can.
All right. So and then this is the clone of the clone.
No, that's just that's. I think that's back to that same. That may be a duplicate
Oh,
picture.
okay,
That's
okay.
just that same nutcracker
All
grow.
right,
Yep,
cool.
that's it on that one. Yep.
All right, dude. Now let's go into
Some more recent.
more recent. So this is a cross project, correct?
This is, yeah, and this is a real interesting one because I did this before I had really gotten into any crossing. I was just, I
Okay.
think I had watched. This was like 2 3 months in. My buddy Turtle Hermit Myco, shout out Turtle Hermit Myco, love that dude. He sent me a bunch of genetics, no questions asked, no quid pro quo early
Mm-hmm.
on, as many do. It's part of what draws me into the community and draws many in, right? It's
Yep.
very giving and loving. So anyway, he sent those to me, which was really awesome. I still have yet to run any of the plates he sent me, but I took out 2 of the swabs, which were fairly fresh. And I had learned about ghetto crossing fairly recently before that. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what would happen if I just traced the same path on a plate with both
Right.
swabs and just really rolled them around and got them nice and, nice and loaded. And this is what I got. MVP and Starfrost were the swabs that I picked. I tried to pick 2 fruits that were pretty morphologically different. It's not good
Right.
practice to do this. I've learned since, mainly because if you weren't the one who grew those parent fruits out, it can be difficult for you to evaluate the byproduct of them to
Sure.
determine whether or not it was successful, right?
Right.
So yeah, but what I did was I traced those same paths, and then from that T0 plate, I picked 3 different sections that all looked to be pretty different colonies that were merged together. So my hope was that I had a couple monos that had merged and created a new dikaryon, of course. I took those 3 sections. This is section 2, or section 1, sorry, of that cross attempt.
Nice.
And that's first flush.
Now, just to be fair,
Mm-hmm.
The macro morphological rationale that you're using to do that,
Mm-hmm.
it is very possible and probable based on your technique that you're basically retracing your footsteps with the second cross, that on a microscopic level you could have the dikaryoticization occurring, and would not even necessarily see that. But either way, at least you use a rationale, right?
Right,
And
right.
that could have been right, or it could have happened way before that. I mean, the initial mycelial growth is almost transparent. You just don't see it, and the odds are that it's put feelers out and possibly found another haploid pretty fast. But again, I was just talking to Ed Grant about this. I do think it is worth, and he thinks it's worth, collecting more information and wisdom around visible, macromorphology of what these things look like. That both he and I believe that while it's not as conclusive as using a microscope to confirm clamps or the absence of clamps, there really is a look.
There is. There is, no doubt.
There is a look. It's
there are
early
probably some.
symmetry. It's wispier. There is literally a quality to it. It tends to, if you have cold and hot cycles in your home, it will show up as like little ripples more prevalently than dicarions do. There's all these little things that do, I personally think, make it worth considering and continuing to build on that understanding of those visible looks.
100%. And to be honest, that's how my monokaryons that I have isolated, that's how I've done it, is starting off, I've used morphological difference to go, hey, I'm going to nag that one away from the T0 plate and then scope it at a later date, right? I mean, and it's worked very well. I mean, it really has. You have to have the time to watch those T0 plates very closely, but yeah, but this was not that.
Yes.
This was very, very poor methodology that somehow may still have had some success. So
very cool. Now, the other thing that's important, you just brought up something I want to reiterate,
sure.
The wisdom in this. You said that you tend to just want to let it grow out first. This is very smart, because if you try to look under a scope too early, it just, unless you look at everything, which you can't do, you don't know what you missed. If you let it completely grow a plate out and it looks symmetrical and it looks like theoretically what a monokaryon culture should look like, and then you transfer that and grow that out, and as that's growing out, take that and then look and then scope it. Then you've given it a time. If you were wrong on that first plate transfer,
you're gonna know.
You've given it plenty of time to dikaryotize, and now you sort of, by postponing the microscopy of it all, you've bought yourself a little time to not waste your time and go, oh, yep, it's fine, it's good, and then just assuming, well, I looked at it right away and it was fine. I'd rather look at it at a later date for that reason. I think that was a good instinct. I don't know if that was your rationale on it, or if you just did it that way and it worked out, but I think that's
no, it was. I mean, that there's been, obviously monokaryons are very susceptible to a variety of issues, more so than dikaryons, and so I was really cautious with them and wanted to give them the proper time to do their thing and ensure that I had what I thought I had. But this was my first ghetto cross attempt. And it was. I found it fascinating because the parent fruits, which you'll see towards the end, are very much albino that has some strange coloration to the cap. Sometimes starfrost. Later generations of starfrost get some of those rings like that, but they don't seem to have quite the same stipes or the same morphology. A little varied. There's no way to know, and that's the hard part with these ghetto crosses is that you can't ever really be 100% sure. So that can be frustrating at times when it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure, and then someone sends you a picture of a fruit that looks just like that one, and you're like, dang it.
Yeah.
Thought I had it. That's section 2 from that same plate. So throwing out a completely different look. I was led to believe at first, like, hey, this is looking like a more promising pheno to chase. As far as like may have actually been a successful cross. But I was actually, in reference to what I just said, I was shown a picture of MVP today that looks very, very, very similar. So I think the first pheno is going to be more my the one I'm going to chase.
Now the other, so let's say you do the ghetto cross the way that you did it, and you you just let your T0 plate grow out a little bit, and then you do what you just did. You take your little transfers and whatnot. And if you get a grow that is throwing out a bunch of phenos, it begs the question that at what phase, right, as the grain was colonizing, you don't really know, because this is still a thing no one talks about that I'm convinced of, is I think it is possible that for whatever reason, a period of time, you could have a sector that isn't dikaryoticing for some window of time.
Sure.
And then depending upon what other things you're putting next to it, now it might dikaryotize with that. And so, I mean, I'm sure this stuff's happening in nature all the time, right? Spores are blowing in the wind, they're landing.
Yep.
You might have a pocket of one dikaryon here, a pocket of one dikaryon there. You know, if
Right.
we already know if you put two distinct dikaryons on a plate, right, two different cultigens,
Mm-hmm.
and they grow up to each other, but they're not playing together.
They're not. Nope.
Right. So we know for a fact that is possible.
Yep. They can exist simultaneously,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely they can. That's
Right.
that's just that same
Yeah.
fruit. That was an early fruit from that tub. The
Nice.
rest were looking like just standard MVP at the time, so I pulled that one and cloned it. But
Oh, there's a little butthole. There's
got a little butthole. Gotta love them.
Yeah, gotta love them. Oh yeah, that's a pretty smooth stipe.
It is very smooth. Yeah. We'll see where it goes.
So did you clone this one, right?
I did. I
cool.
clone and swab really anything I find fascinating. I tend to at least swab. If I like it, I clone it and swab it. Because why not? You know, if I have a plate anyway, why not?
Right. Yeah.
That's the Starfrost parent fruit from my buddy Turtle Hermit Myco. So that's where those swabs came from. One half of that cross. And then that's the MVP. And then I think the third picture is just a second flush of Starfrost. So based on those pictures, you know, it looks pretty different to me.
I'm inclined. Let's go way back here.
And I actually have just the third flush is probably the best picture. I didn't send it to you because I just pulled it, I think, yesterday, but it has these perfect bullseye rings. If anybody looks at my feed on Facebook or Insta, you'll see it. But
yeah, so what I'm seeing here is very smooth stipes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing these small little pointy caps, and then when you go back to the here, right, these are very bulbous caps.
Mm-hmm. They are.
And then gnarly curvy stipes.
Yep.
Whereas here you have straighter stipes, maybe just a touch of a ripple in the stipe, but much straighter.
Mm-hmm.
And then these caps look a little more like. So anyway, I'm seeing traits of both for sure.
Same.
Unless I ran that specific culture for a long time and I had a real intimate knowledge of the two, you know, at least from just these photos, it looks promising.
It's cool either way. I'm happy with especially the ones with the rings on them. Those came out really neat. I'm very happy with them, and I'll chase it regardless. But yeah, that's definitely something to note, I think, for people that want to get into, you know, creating new genetics and you know, crossing stuff, that, you know, you can do it on that level. I think it's just really important, like we talked about in truth and advertising, to just say, hey, this was a cross attempt, right?
Yep, 100%. That's just shoot straight.
Yep.
All right, so we got one more here.
All right, this is my favorite. This is my baby right now. So this is what I have titled Dirty Sanchez. And so Dirty South kind of mentored me early on. You know, kind of took me under his wing, and he's a real good dude. Love him, love his genetics. And these are two cultures that both came from him, Nutcracker, and one called Three-Way Cross. It was an attempted three-way recombination that he did using a magic myco kit, I believe. I could be wrong on the brand name there, but
no, I think you're right.
Okay, yeah. And it was of Stormtrooper, JMF, and Clockwork Orange Tat. So I grew both of those out and loved both fruits morphologically, scope-wise, everything, right?
Yeah.
And I said I'd like to try to cross these, and I was not at the point where I was working with monokaryons yet, so I did a fresh fruit double swab. And you'll see at the end I have the parent fruits, I believe, but that's the early fruit from the initial run.
The coloring on that is vivid.
Yeah, and this was a T0 plate send, which is really, I try nowadays, the last few months and on, I try to send as early as I can from spore. So like T0, T1, T2.
Well, what's your goal, right? If you want variety, always send your T0s.
Yep.
If you want something pure and isolated, then, you know, work a monoculture, get it there, and you're good.
Yeah, you got it.
Or do both.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You can do both. You can do this first and then work it to
Yep.
canopy. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So this was an albino that popped
Yep.
up in that T0 run, which I thought was really cool. Really cool. I just loved the blue middle on it. Just got some really awesome variation in that little 6 quart. This was second flush. There's that albino.
There's
It
that
did have
albino.
spores. Scoped that, and it did produce them. We'll see if those spores are viable or not. But
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So that was exciting. That's just one of the caps that I swabbed. Um, that one had some really neat, like kind of mycelium bumpiness going on the
Hmm.
top of it. I think that's the underside.
Man, I'm just looking. You got a delicate touch with those swabs, man.
Thank
Because
you.
I think I know the consistency of those gills, and they are
Very fragile.
looking relatively undisturbed. So
Man, so
that's
that
good.
is one thing that I really do pride myself on, that that I do spend a lot of time and effort on, is I only generally will swab maybe 1 to 2 fruits per tub. So when you're getting swabs from me, you're getting the
Right.
same swabs I'm running. You're not getting
Right.
swabs from random fruits out of my tub, and I take my time with them because of that. I'm not working through 100 swab sets. I'm doing 8.
Yep.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that's it. That's
Yep.
all you get in that one.
Now, I will say, as a practice, I like to take a picture at some point of all my swabs that I swabbed right next to the fruits that I actually swabbed. So people can
Yes.
go, oh, he swabbed those fruits. So
Yes.
sometimes it's one fruit because one fruit was exceptional and the rest I don't care to continue on those, genetics. Other times, if they're pretty consistent, I'll just take like the four biggest fruits and swab
Yeah.
those. But either way, if I'm ever like, saying, hey, I got some free swabs, guys, or if people want swabs, I always have a record of the fruits that I swab, so people can see that.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So those are that's some of my nutcracker, and that's just showing. You'll see in the later pictures where this comes into play, but that gill structure in that previous
Mm-hmm.
picture, you'll see it here in a
That
minute.
one.
Yeah, that gill
Okay.
structure there. Um, so this is third flush of that same T0 run, and it just keeps getting weirder. Um, Loved some of these fruits as they were maturing. Actually, I want to say this may be only second flush. I think that previous was
Okay.
still first. Yeah, and it just keeps getting weirder the further we go, man. When I opened the tub on this, you'll see the final fruit that it pushed out here in a second. Yeah, there it is.
Mm.
When I opened the tub on that day, man, I mean, I watched this thing develop, but I still couldn't have really been prepared for what it was. Um, yeah,
Yeah, that's a pretty cool fruit right there.
just wait. The next pictures do it a little more
Oh
justice. It looks like a peach or something, right? I mean,
man.
that thing is just crazy, and the gill structure on it, it had like 3 separate gill surfaces. So it had what you see there,
Mm-hmm.
kind of unfurled on the outside, and then it had. If you go to the next picture, it may show it. Yeah, there you go. And then it has like this little ring.
What?
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
was
fascinating.
Oh, it was the wildest thing, and it was almost like a micro gill structure in
Mm-hmm.
that ridge that runs along, and then it had standard gills on the inside. So this one is a ghetto cross, but I mean, it's
No,
hard.
what you got right there, that's like, you got the trial and you got the pre-trial. So you got the gill and you got the pre-gill right there.
Yep,
Yeah.
the
You
pre-gill,
got the
baby, I love it.
pre-gill.
Yep,
That's the
yep, yep.
backup. If the pre-gill doesn't eject enough spores, they got the backup gill.
Ready to rock.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Well, I swabbed both
man.
major sets of gills, that exterior set. So there's that nutcracker gill morphology coming
Dude, that
through.
really then has three surfaces of gill. You have the underside,
Yep.
you have that edge gill, and then you got the top like
I think
fluffy
that
gill.
edge is a gill, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah. Hmm.
it's weird. It was
I
almost
mean,
like
I don't know if it's
mucus.
making any spores or not, but
No,
yeah.
probably not. I didn't even swab that little edge thing.
No.
I swabbed the inner and outer. And I actually sent the T0 plate. It was a nice clean germ, no back, nothing. It was
Nice.
so yeah. This has definitely been my most exciting fruit to date. Um, and I'll be running it from clone and spore. That's one of the parent fruits, that kind of open cap nutcracker there.
Nice.
Yeah, they're in the foreground. There's another shot of that same nutcracker. That was flush 2 of that same first nutcracker jug grow that I ever did. And then there's the 3-way cross. That fruit kind of dead center in the right is the one that I swabbed. That double swabbed with the nutcracker. So the next picture I think shows them. Maybe the one after that. Pretty cool fruit though. Had some pretty neat cap shape to it there. But yeah, those are the parent fruits.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, dude. All this 7 months.
It's doable, man.
You just got to be obsessed.
You
just
do.
Gotta
That's all you have
it.
to do. You just have to neglect your day job.
Yeah.
You know, get your wife mad at you.
I'm good at that. It's all good. I'm like, I get all excited about something and nobody else is home, so of course I want to tell somebody, so I'll start telling her, and it just like within seconds her eyes glaze over, and it's like, okay, never mind.
I gave up early on. Yeah, I gave up early on. Definitely.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
That's why when I hear about these, Raymond Medici, the Medicis, or the Michael Grows, and all these people, I'm like, blah, damn you.
Yeah, I'm so jealous, man. I want that so bad. I want my wife to have her own her flow hood across the room.
Yeah, right.
I want that.
Matching SABs, yes.
Yeah, nope, please.
Not in the cards for me. That's okay.
Nah, not for me.
This is what's in the cards for me. I play the cards I'm dealt.
Yep.
That's all you can do. Cool, man. Well, we'll have you on again. I know you also forage. You like to get outside and do some of the same hobbies I do. So I have to have you back on. We'll talk about some of your outdoor adventures and
perfect
all that stuff. But thank you so much for being on. Absolutely glad to get your name out there so people know about you. Know that you're putting in the work, and yeah.
Thank you.
Need more people like you that are really passionate about the work.
That's where it's at. It's in the work. And if you don't mind, I'd like to do a 15% off to anybody who wants to make an order, and that'll be valid for the next week.
That'll all be in the description below. 15% off. Just say the secret password.
That's all. Yeah. We'll put it in the description. Definitely.
Cool, man. All right, dude. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you again shortly here.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right, take care, man. All right, guys. That was Natural State Mycology. I don't know about you, but I like that guy. Yeah, he's real impressive. He's done a lot of cool stuff in a very short amount of time. Like I say a lot of times, pay attention, listen. If your gurus and the people you admire in mycology are taking the time to give you some advice, take the advice. And that's what he did. And he's a quick learner, and he's figuring a lot of stuff out. So anyway, that was a great conversation. Again, thanks, man, for being on. Now, like I said in the beginning of the show, after a little hiatus, Ed Grand back on the scene. We're going to chop it up. We're going to get into some recent topics here. So without further ado, man. By the way, he so normally when I did all my live shows, right, when I was absolutely live streaming, in Bangkok, Thailand, it was the morning when we were recording at night here in the States. And so when I recorded this segment, the tables were turned. And man, so I'm apologizing in advance. I got some dark circles under my eyes. I'm looking a little rough. And Ed was, it's like the end of his day. So now I know how Ed felt all those times when I was basically waking him up out of bed and saying, hey, get on this podcast. So anyway, without further ado, Ed Grand, PhD. All right, dude. What's up, Ed?
Howdy doody. Howdy doody.
Wow. Old... See, here's the difference. So usually the tables are turned and you're coming in the morning fresh. Fresh. You didn't work all day. You didn't, fix your Martha tents. And
yeah. I've been drinking a little bit of that kratom, as you guys call it over there in
kratom.
America.
Yeah, kratom.
Yeah, I'm thumb they call it now. It's just like literally like water, like boiled water. They put I think it's kind of like the Thai lean a bit, I think. But I had too much, but I did have a little bit earlier.
Nice, yeah. It's a really interesting the effect is pretty unique. I know they say it's got a narcotic effect, but it's different. It's not quite the same. Um,
Yeah, it's really low level
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
I guess you can get the concentrates and
yeah.
stuff. They're like 50. This is just literally like tea, like leaves, and
The
they just
leaves, yeah.
boil it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the origin, right? Was they just used to chew the leaves.
Yeah, I
So
think
yeah,
so. Yeah, and then now everybody's got to extract it.
all
So
comes back
th-
to
this
teas
is
and
like,
extracts. Yeah.
yeah, this is like stuff grandmas would drink. I
Yes.
don't think it's like for gangster rappers or anything.
Right. Though these days, man, these new rappers, man, they're breaking the cliches, by the day. You never know. They're gonna be doing yoga on the hood of a Bentley. You
Yeah,
don't know what's gonna happen, dude.
yeah,
They
yeah. I'm
can do
out
it
of the
all.
loop.
All right. So we were talking about what we should cover. It's been a minute, so we got plenty to talk about. I think we'll have plenty to talk about here off and on, probably forever. Probably
Mm.
never gonna run out of stuff to talk about.
I still got like 12 pages of stuff
Yeah.
up my wall.
So, but the thing that came up in the Discord this week was a lot of talk around fresh air exchange, low oxygen, high oxygen, pumping in CO2, not pumping in CO2, a lot of like gas talk. And you started chiming in on some stuff, so I thought we should visit fresh air exchange, what it means, how we should be looking at it, how we shouldn't be looking at it, and then what I think you identified as like a preoccupation with the oxygen
Hmm.
versus what might actually be a little more important to think about is what we're doing with the CO2 that's produced by the mushrooms when we're growing them. So just go for it. I'll interject and ask questions as I need to, but yeah, let's just hear your thoughts on what you see people talking to you about.
Okay, so we got three terms basically. I think there's three things. It's like oxygen, CO2, and basically fresh air exchange. So those are probably the three things that are the most important. So let's go back to what fungi are. Fungi respire like we do. So we breathe in oxygen and we expel CO2. One of the things about CO2 and oxygen and all the other components in air like nitrogen is that CO2 is dense, it's heavy. So if you've ever, played with butane and tried to fill up a cup, you know how the butane falls down, or
Right.
you ever put it in your hand and poof. Like that's because the gas is denser. So CO2 is quite a bit denser than oxygen and nitrogen, which are the other main components. So I just looked up the numbers. So air, like typical air, is
70
78.1%
something.
nitrogen,
Yeah.
21% oxygen, and a little bit of argon, and like 0.04% CO2. So that is
Right.
400 parts per million. So
Okay.
like I tried to do a little of the math on so when you're talking about 21% oxygen, that's 210,000 parts per million. So
Okay.
0.21, out of 100 or a million or whatever. So that's 210,000 ppm is how they say it. CO2 in a typical environment is 400 ppm. Now, if you
Right.
throw in a metabolizing organism, a respiring organism like our fungi, that number goes way up. And remember, CO2 is denser than air. So essentially, it does two things. The CO2 concentration builds up in your monotub or whatever it might be, but it also displaces the oxygen. So the
Right.
oxygen gets displaced, and so you're doing two things. And like we were just briefly talking about, you're basically when they say choking out the fungus, you're literally like you're asphyxiating the fungus
Right.
because the fungus needs oxygen like we do. And so with fresh air exchange, you're trying to do two things essentially at the same time. You're trying to get rid of the CO2 and you kind of consequently like also introduce more oxygen. Now with those numbers, the 210,000 ppm versus 400, the difference is so dramatic. I did the math, I forgot, but it's way there's you're basically never going to run out of oxygen.
Right.
The fungus, so when we say choking something out, what we're really saying is you're displacing the oxygen. So choking it out is essentially like when maybe like if you breathe into a bag and
Right.
like that's you're trying to increase the amount of CO2 in your lungs and in your blood, and that has you can explain
Right.
that. But basically what you want to do is get rid of that CO2, which is a byproduct of metabolism. And so you by default you increase the oxygen, but the oxygen is always there.
Right.
I think the real thing we're really doing is getting rid of the CO2.
Right. Yeah,
So
so
that
everybody says more oxygen. And so the point you brought up, I thought
Mhm.
it was it's very scientific, very nerdy, but very important to
Yeah,
just
this
clarify
can get
is
nerdy.
unless you have an oxygen generator or unless you're doing something to chew up oxygen, it's the same amount of oxygen. What you're getting at is it available? But in a lot of cases in our
Mhm.
growing environment, depending upon where you have your holes, right, on your if you're growing in monotubs,
Yeah.
that's why they make such a big deal about having that cake right
Mhm.
below those side holes, because the CO2 creates like a little blanket, and if there's a way for that to come off, you're good. You don't have to open. This is the, modified monotubs, no touch. They just do their own thing. It's when you
Mhm.
dial all that stuff in perfectly. If your hole is a good inch above the top of your cake surface,
Yeah.
now you have 1 inch blanket of CO2 theoretically. Now I imagine there's some convection currents and there's some exchange going on. But that's the difference between getting it right and getting it almost right.
Mhm.
So if
Yes,
you're
yes.
trying to, not touch your tubs, you're going to have to really dial in your substrate and your grain so that it hits that mark every time.
Yes, and that's where it's like tweaking it,
Yeah.
I guess dialing it in. Yeah, you got to have those holes in just the right place. And then you get back, like you mentioned, the depth of your substrate.
Right.
If you're gonna change that, if you're gonna change the amount of probably grain in your quark, because the grain is gonna
Right.
be, if you use more grain, it's gonna be giving off more CO2.
Every
Um,
little variable will have a subtle impact. Absolutely. Yes.
yeah,
And
little
we will
thing.
revisit that in a little bit when we
Mhm.
talk about Ed was talking to me about the center of the tub phenomenon. So we'll revisit that later and some of the effects of what might be triggering some of that stuff. Um, but yeah, I think so. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not pumping. You're not pumping the oxygen.
Right.
The goal is displacing the heavy CO2 that,
Yeah.
depending upon what tech you're using for your growing environment, might or might not be encouraging or discouraging this blanket of CO2 that's the byproduct of fungi respirating. So, for example, I had said to you, a lot of people, when you read the shroomery articles, it's like you must open 3 times a day, you must fan for 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes, and there's all this, protocols for all this. In my head, I was always thinking, just the way gas dynamics works, all I needed to do was open the lid of my dub tub, use the lid to just maybe fan a couple times, put the lid back where it was. And that's always worked for me. But that sort of goes into what you're saying, which is, and I think this is why it's important to bring up. By fanning a long time, you're not giving it a lot more oxygen.
No, no, no.
All you have to do is blow off that blanket of CO2.
Yes, yes.
Anything past that, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, and you're drying out the substrate, and you're
A-
also removing
And
all the
drying out.
humidity.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was literally like 2 years ago, I was literally putting like a floor fan and like pointing it down
Really.
in my mono tubs when I was
Yep.
still using,
Oh,
and I would
yeah.
sit there and I'd like be like, okay, there's a minute, and I had
Hmm.
a fan, like a floor fan, like
Right.
a pedestal fan
Yep.
on like full blast, like blowing into my tubs, and I'm like,
Yes.
I thought it was so ridiculous. I was just like, why am I
Yeah.
doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, I read it online. Yeah, I gotta.
I read it online. That's the beginning of every bad story these days. It seems
Arr.
like.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But no, there would be cases where um, I've had it where the surface, all the aerial mycelium, the hyphal tips and all that are just really wet. And so I have both taken a clean piece of paper towel and just lightly allowed it to absorb that. That seems to work just fine. But the other thing you could do if you felt that that was just the beads were just a little too big, you could mist a little more. There might be a situation where you would want to fan more or increase fresh air exchange for the purpose of speeding up a drying out of that. I've found that to be occasionally an issue if my bags are really, really wet. That's why I tend to really get my field capacity on my bags barely, squeezing barely a drop out of those things, because if I run just a touch wet, which I can get away with in tubs, I have found that they can get so wet in those bags that I
I
gotta
have
just
the
wait
same problem.
forever. Now you
Mm,
can just wait. You can literally just wait. Hope there's no contamination. Sometimes they'll stall.
yes.
Sometimes they will ultimately come out the other side of the tunnel. But overall, for me, if I've ever identified just extremely wet bags, I'm opening it up in front of the flow hood. I'm maybe putting a paper towel in there to wick some of that up. So there could be a reason to like overdo the FAE for the purpose of, fixing a problem.
For
But
sure.
generally speaking, if you're trying to dial everything in, all you really got to think about, and I forget who did this video. There's a great video on YouTube about this where the guy like drew a picture. He was explaining how the fluid
Yeah.
dynamics in the tub work, right? That's why you got the holes high on the sides or on the ends. That's the air that's coming in. Because just the way air currents work, right? The air is going to come in the sides and the heavy CO2 is automatically going to be pushed down. That's just the way that process is going to work.
And
And I
also
love that video.
the temperature difference,
Is
right?
going to create some of that convection and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
all that stuff.
I know exactly the video you're. It was one
Yeah.
of the guys I think you had on very, very long, long, long time ago. It was one of those guys.
It
I think
wasn't
I've seen two
fungi
of them.
fruits though. I'm trying to, was it home mycology? I haven't had him on yet, but
Can't remember.
anyway, yeah, I that was one of the more memorable videos from my early
Oh,
days
for
of
sure.
going, just having things click and go, oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
And at that point, I don't need to read somebody's specific hole placement because I understand what I'm trying to accomplish with that at that point. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's going to depend on your tub size and yeah, how
all
many
that.
holes and whether you choose to make 1/4 inch holes or 2 inch holes or
Right.
4 inch holes and
Yeah.
yeah, your filters, your micropore tape, whether you got 2 layers of micropore tape.
Right.
Um, yeah, this is why I think dialing in maybe a bigger atmosphere might be, it's a little bit scary because if something goes wrong, it'll all go wrong, but I
Right.
think it might be a little more, it's got a buffer,
100%.
for temperature and for the humidity
Oh
and
yeah. Those
yeah,
big 66 quart tubs, I don't need to run them.
mm,
I don't know would know what to do with all that fruit. But boy, when you see the just banging tub pictures on
mhm.
Instagram or wherever, I mean, it's usually one of those tubs. Yeah. I think there's more atmosphere. There's more of a microclimate in there. And I think it's exactly what you're saying, which is when it's so teeny tiny, it's just too teeny tiny. There's not yeah, too little.
Yep,
All
exactly.
right. So FAE, I think we clarified that. And I think it was really fascinating, man. I when I was reading on the Discord your exchange with people, the thing that just blew my mind was when you sat down and did the math on it and figured out like you really can't in the grand scheme of things disturb these concentrations very much.
Yeah,
Um it's really
21% oxygen is not going to
that's
change.
it's not unless you're creating a literal sealed environment and generating more oxygen, there's no way you're going to be. I mean, gases want to mix. They're just going to keep mixing. And unless they're heavy, then the CO2 is going to sit there. And so that I think that's a big takeaway on that one is just maybe think less about oxygen. It's there. They're going to get it. Think more about what is my heavy CO2 doing? Does it have a
Yes.
way of getting out of the,
Yes.
the tub? And how much do I really need to fan to get it out of there? Probably a couple seconds, a few
Yeah.
good fans, or if you got a portable fan, just blow it over there for,
Well,
done.
on the opposite end of the spectrum, like two things, like you mentioned, the forest floor where CO2 is going to build up, and
Yeah.
that's what the guy in the video he was mentioning, like, imagine the forest floor
Yeah.
and the CO2 is kind of saturating the soil, and when those pins come up, they're looking for that decreased, they're not looking for oxygen. They're
Right.
looking for decreased CO2, and that's their trigger to be like, oh, this is the surface.
Right.
That's where the air is. That's where I'm
Yep.
going to sporulate. That's where I'm going to disperse my
Yep.
spores. One thing I want to mention before I forget, remember BRF Tech,
Mm-hmm.
the cakes. What did you do? You put those in a mono tub with a 2 or 3 inch layer of perlite,
Right.
and all of that CO2 would just fall off the cakes. And those were
Oh,
pretty much,
dude.
I
Yes.
just thought about it now when we were like, remember, those work brilliantly. BRF Tech.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the multi-spore syringe, but
Holy
if you
cow,
were
dude.
doing
That's it. You're right. That's what that is.
that's
It's
BRF
falling
Tech with
down into the
LC.
moat. Yes.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, and like I think he goes by something different now on YouTube, but basically Munchausen,
Oh
um
yeah, stay
Munch's
shroomy.
Stay Shroomy, he loves these little tall
Mm,
growing things, right?
hmm
That might be why.
He's got some good stuff to sit, man. He's got
Yeah.
tidbits. You just got to
He
listen to
does
him
have tidbits.
closely.
And I just remember he was the first guy had a video that just said, "Look, guys, I've been grown for 2 years. I've been grown for 5 years. I've been grown for decades.
Hmm
So just I got something to say." So yeah, I
Definitely.
appreciated listening to him. Plus, man, I just remember seeing the tightest pin set I ever seen in my entire life as a new grower and just going, "Tell me what to do, brother." Like,
Yeah.
how do you get
His
that?
B plus, I think that's why he got kicked off YouTube or something because of
Probably.
some
YouTube
B
said,
plus.
"Wait, we don't want everybody growing this good. This is way too many
Yeah,
mushrooms."
exactly.
Yeah.
They're not gonna buy anything if they if they figure
Right.
this out.
Yes. Um, wow, dude, that is fascinating and has me sitting back going, how can I take that information and scale it up? What do you
I'm
do?
gonna make I actually have a note written already that says to make. I'm gonna make like a 2 gallon BRF cake.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking if you could develop, Dan Rogers and Micropose, they just and this was all because they had heard so many people complain about max yield bins that for the price there's, some flaws. It's not quite perfect. For me, the biggest one was that the top lid sits inside the bottom tray, and so you've created an automatic potential point. I guess you could tape it, but that was my problem in general with those bins was I had to do so much taping on them. Um, so they said when they made theirs, they had the lip of the top of it go over and around the bottom. Airborne contamination tends to fall down. That seems like a superior build. They're also really high quality plastic. The molds were dialed in real well. Everything about them looks great. I'm hoping to have him on coming up here for my 1 year anniversary. We're going to go live and have him on. He'll be talking about all that stuff. But it got me to thinking, man, if you could, right? Because you want that growing environment most of the time. If at some point in time, right when the pin set's really hitting, if you could pull that out, if there was some sort of like handle for an inner tray and you could pull that out and then set that in a tent, they might just go. And you never get fuzzy feet,
Yeah.
never have to worry. You just pull them out of the tub, put them in I don't know, might be too much work, but going off
Uh,
of your idea, that was where my mind went.
that's funny. A guy I've been talking to up in Alaska, he does exactly that. He
Ah,
grows in the max yield bins and he
yep.
uses a liner and then he takes the
Pulls the liner
whole
out.
thing out and
Yep.
puts it on his shelf. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Getting great flushes, I'm sure.
yeah, I think it's a good way to utilize all of the surface area too.
Right.
You get those corners that are kind of funny and the sides if you
Yep.
can. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting excited now.
I like that. That's cool. All right, so let's go off of that. So when in this fresh air exchange versus CO2 blankets versus it's not about the oxygen. Let's continue on all these growing parameters and factors, and let's talk about humidity. And I want to talk about we've talked a lot about your grab and drag technique, which we can revisit here in a minute. But I want to talk about the internet has renamed your incontinence pads, your chucks. They renamed it, dude. I love this. They call it Ed's Diaper Tech.
Man,
Oh
if
my
you give it
God,
10
dude.
more years, that'll have a different connotation.
Diaper Tech.
It'll
Oh
be,
yeah.
we'll turn it into Ed's Pan Diaper Tech, and it's
Yeah.
got like a
Yeah.
poo in the diaper already.
Oh, that's a product line that is just
Yeah,
waiting to
that's how
happen
I'm gonna
right
get
there.
rich, man. I'm gonna get rich. Recycled incontinence pads. Yeah, you
Yeah.
probably throw hundreds of those a day away, right?
Oh yeah. But so first off, I mean, all your techs are driven. I can tell they're just, you're thinking about what do the mushrooms need or what do the spores
Mm,
need, and what is a
trying,
simple way
yes.
to deliver it. I don't know if you've ever been where I live. When we were looking to buy a house around here, we just for fun looked at a few houses that had indoor pools, right? I'm in Ohio. The winters are brutal. People with money build big structures off the back of their house, cover their pools. So they got indoor pools. Minute you walk in an indoor pool, the humidity just hits you like a
Mm.
wall. And
Oh
there's no
yeah.
humidifier in there other than a giant pool. So when you started doing those Chucks pads and just pouring, because they can, they can take a full human bladder for sure. That can be
Oh
well over
yeah.
800 cc's, right? A full
Oh
bladder,
yeah,
six to
yeah.
800.
Easily a quart, probably a
Yeah.
quart and a half. Yeah.
So when you did that, I said, "Oh, that's really smart because it's flat, it's thin, but it's soaked with water. It is going to just naturally evaporate. It's not that different than what wet perlite's supposed to do, right?"
Yeah, yes. Yep.
So, but I use the pool analogy because that's really, if anyone's ever walked into an indoor pool, if you were on the swim team at school or at a gym or something, it's a humid room. So you don't necessarily need the fogger. So all these people that want to grow stuff and go, well, I can't afford a 10-head fogger from, this
Don't
place
need
and
them.
that place. Just go buy some incontinence pads. They're
Yeah.
pretty cheap.
People
They're
don't believe
disposable.
it. They don't believe it, but I've got like my tent now, I've got 8 of them, and like I was saying earlier, it's at 95%
All
humidity.
the
I've
time.
got 4 humidity gauges, and they're all at 95 or 98,
Yeah.
and it's 8 of them. It's only 8 of them. They're like a quarter a piece,
Right.
and it's a 4 by 8 by 2 meter tent, and the
Right.
whole thing, like you said, it's like walking into that swimming pool
Yeah.
in the Holiday Inn, Michigan too, like
Right.
the Holiday Inn. You're in your room, and then all of a sudden you walk out, and immediately you can
Right.
feel that
Yeah.
humidity, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow. And if you wear glasses, they all fog up.
Oh, I know, dude.
Like so,
I'm more sensitive to humidity changes than you
oh, I know.
non-glasses wearers. Yeah.
I wore
It's very
glasses for
annoying.
years. I know. Yeah, and every time, you're,
Yeah.
you're trying to look down at the pool, see if there's anybody in bikinis or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
like, damn it, I can't see.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah.
But
Sadly,
for
yes, I know
sure,
all
it's
about
it's
that.
definitely something that the another guy who's got a big tent, he was like, there's no way it's gonna humidify this tent.
Right.
Here's how I know it does because I've done it, and he tried it also, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I wish I would have known about this. Here's the weird thing that where it actually came from. I have guinea pigs, and I have another room that I sometimes stay in, and that room is completely sealed. And when I walk into that room, there's no air conditioner. And I walk in, and there's incontinence pads under the cage, and it's a pretty big cage. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably like almost 4 by 8
Oh,
cage. And they pee on it, and so it's
right.
saturated with guinea pig piss. And when I'm not there for 24 hours, the room basically turns into a greenhouse.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so my other laptop that's in that room it's done. I had a scale that had the AAA batteries in it, rusted out.
Ah,
I've
yeah.
had to replace several other electronics devices. I had a harmonica that started rusting. I'm like, what in the hell is going on in this room? And then I realized that room is like a sauna.
Right.
When I'm not there and it gets up to, it
I
gets
bet it
warm, and
smells good in there, Ed, if you've not
oh
opened
yeah.
that door for a while.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wonderful, man.
Yeah.
After 2 days, if
Yeah.
I haven't been there for a couple days, yeah, it's wonderful. I bet my
Well,
neighbors love me.
it's fascinating that you got people going, no possible way it works. And I mean, meteorology is probably my least favorite science. Um, but if you know anything about it, you know that the oceans are
Oh,
the
yeah.
reason we have
Mm,
weather. That
mm-hmm.
you know, literally precipitation is just a result of ocean and lake water evaporating, going up into clouds, falling back down. That's and then heat cycles. So like the way the Earth's weather works is really the same two things that we're dealing with in our tents all the time: temperature, humidity. We're trying to create the right weather in there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the flat surface, there's so much
It's
surface area.
surface area is key.
That's what
Yeah.
we don't think about. You think like, ah, a wet pad in there, but it's not like a wadded up wet dish rag.
And it's not a
It's
glass of water.
flat.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Remember
Same
I
with a
used to
pool, right? The pool's almost the
mm,
entire indoor pool space. Yeah, it's
yeah,
all that surface area. It's
all that
definitely part of it.
evaporation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
it's
have a question for
incredible.
you about them. So, how often do you change them out? I imagine you can go through multiple growing cycles, but is there ever a point where you just, for the concern of contamination, do they get moldy? Like, how often are you replacing them?
I'd say about once a month probably,
Oh,
but I
okay.
usually just, to be honest, if I the water it gets kind of like brown, like the buildup like on the shower or whatever. It
Yeah.
gets that like scaly stuff on the edges.
Oh, okay.
I use drinking water, but sometimes it just gets sort of nasty near the edges. You can kind of tell when you should change them.
Okay.
And they will get like if they've been saturated for like a month or two and you're kind of moving in shoe boxes or things in and out, they will get kind of like you can just kind of tell when you should
Right.
change them. It's like,
Cool.
like kids' diapers, you can just kind of know. But
You
it's
just
not that
know.
often. Yeah. It's not that often though, and the ones I buy here, they're about a quarter a piece.
Right.
And the other thing is you can actually put mono tubs. So now I have a 4x8 tent with three of the smaller Marthas, and
Right.
you can, if you have trouble with that buffer zone and you're running mono tubs, you can just put the whole mono tub in there.
Right. Yeah. Why
Right?
not?
So you put shoe boxes in there, mono tubs, and just put them on your Martha tents.
Right.
So just I'm basically using my Martha tents now as shelving units for
Yeah.
for bags. If you've got
Right.
bags, and I've had trouble with the bags, the filter patches. If you don't cover them up, they'll tend to get a little bit dry, especially, you can tell right where the air is sort of going in and out.
Right.
There'll be that little dry spot.
Yep.
And I put like tape over the filters, but if you don't want to do that, you can just chuck them in the tent too.
Yep. Dude, that specific that variability is specifically I remember hearing Dan a Micropost say the whole reason he got into the filter patch business was because he's old school, he used to use polyfill, but there was no consistency in how you would wad up a wad of
Hmm.
polyfill. And so he would see all this variability in the growth on his tub based on whether he shoved a little extra in this hole and not enough in that hole. And so that's what drove that desire for like a uniform filter patch of some sorts. But it's really, these are just, deeper down the rabbit hole we go with everything we learn. It's just, we're not at the end of the rabbit hole yet. We're going deeper. We're going deeper. And then
Oh no.
now this is so all this stuff, all this talk about how important these factors are, how easy it is to adjust the variables. It has me thinking back to the early days, and you'd find somebody that really knew how to grow mushrooms, and they would say, just do it my way.
Mm.
Stop farting around. It's because they went through this whole process
Mm-hmm.
and they finally dialed it in and have like, mwah, look at that grow, right? Manna from heaven. You think that guy is going to adjust his text anymore?
No,
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 he
no.
is dialed where he wants to be, right?
Those kind of people, though, I bet like they do not move their tubs. They're not going to move their tubs to the other side of the room. They're
Right.
not going to put them in a different room. Once you get that location that
Yeah.
just works well, like I was saying that the moving a tent from the one side of the room to the other, an internal wall or an
Yeah.
external wall, and then you have the back in Michigan when I was growing like 30 years ago in my dorm room, the temperature, the weather changes, the
Uh,
seasonal changes.
I
Like
deal with that. Growing in the
yeah,
winter is a 1000% different than growing. It's like I gotta learn it all over again. I remember
Mm,
I just got
yeah.
everything dialed in, great, and then winter hit, and I was like, oh, maybe I do suck at this. And,
That's
and then
exactly.
and then I realized, oh, well, my basement in the summer, right, dude, right now my basement's 60
Oh.
degrees, or I'm sorry, 60% humidity, and that's with a dehumidifier running 24/7. So
Oh.
I'm real humid in my basement in the summer, but in the winter, 17 to 19% relative humidity. And for those who don't know, your average living space is like 30 to 40, 35
Mm,
to 45, somewhere around there. So the basement's dry as a bone in the winters, and that dryness has a massive impact. For me, I'm swinging from 60% to basically 20% relative humidity. So everything I do has to change. I got to make things wetter sometimes, drier
mhm.
sometimes. Sometimes I care about temperature, sometimes I don't. Now, overall, I have found, and this is complete opposite for you, I love to stay right around 70 degrees. I find that the minute I try to heat things up over 70, the higher the heat is for me, the more problems I have. Now, I know you're growing around 85 or something like that.
Yeah,
So
I have.
yeah, so
Well, I
you
have nothing.
need those incontinence pads. You have to use them, right? Because your heat is having a greater effect on that evaporative process than probably in my environment.
Yeah, well, here's something that's a little bit more difficult to understand. Even for me, I struggle. Relative humidity. Remember
Hmm.
the ability of the air to hold moisture. What we want is about 90% relative humidity.
Right.
So that means when you cool the air has less ability to hold water.
Right.
So essentially, the relative humidity goes up.
Right.
So in your basement right now, because the walls are cool, I'm assuming they're cool, the relative humidity has gone up and the air in there is cooler. Now, this is where we want to try to keep it. I don't know if it's necessarily the temperature, but we want to keep the relative humidity constant.
Right.
So if you're
Okay.
gonna do something or you have some uncontrollable reason why the temperature changes, like I do, or you do the thing you got to worry about is the relative humidity,
All
because you
right.
want.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know if I'm gonna have to look into that one to understand.
Yeah,
In my head, I'm just going humidity. That's how much moisture's in the air.
no,
It's
it's
not. It's a different.
relative
Yeah.
humidity.
Okay.
Yes, the small r with a big H. And if you look on your humidity gauges, they will say RH, like a small r, big H.
Uh-huh.
That stands for relative humidity. And so when you increase the temperature of the air, basically it allows more moisture to be evaporated, and it can essentially hold more moisture.
Can it? That seems counterintuitive in my
I
head because I'm
know.
thinking gases
I
expand. So
right.
the hot anyway. Okay,
I
I want to get into that, and I'm gonna do like my Khan Academy relative humidity video
I may have said that backwards
and
because it's
figure that
different
out.
also when you're dealing with liquids. So like in the
Oh
wintertime,
yeah.
liquids dissolve more gases because they're cooler, and it's that
Uh,
whole Brownian motion in
right,
atoms.
right.
But if you have hotter air, I believe it's okay. So here's the thing
I
with it.
still think you're right,
Hotter
but
air, the relative humidity will drop. So if you take a given volume of air and it has a certain amount of
yeah, okay,
humidity
that's right. Yes,
and
that's
you
right.
increase the temperature, the relative humidity goes down.
Right. Yeah, you just got to think of it in terms of gas particles.
Yeah, so the absolute amount of humidity, water in the air could be the same, but the relative humidity, because the
Right.
temperatures went out, will drop.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean, to
that's the right
go
way.
super elementary science, that's fascinating difference between a solid liquid and a gas. A solid
Yeah, exactly.
is a extremely fixed structural state, right? If you take a
Mhm.
given sample of a solid thing, it's not going to be that different wherever you're at. For liquid, maybe there's a little variability, but then the minute you're messing with gas, the temperature is huge, right? Something
It's
in the
huge,
solid state,
yes.
it doesn't matter if it's 1 degree or it's 100 degrees. If it's in the solid state, it has not changed its structure. In a liquid, maybe there's a little bit of behavioral difference. The minute it's a gas, temperature is everything.
Temperature,
It's
pressure,
literally everything.
density,
Yeah.
all of those
Yeah.
things. And I think that's also another thing when you talk about transpiration or evaporation. When you're the different seasons, the air pressure is different.
Right.
Like the atmospheric
Yeah.
pressure is
Yeah.
going to be different at different times of the year, and that's probably we need to get a real engineer, not like me.
Uh,
I
that's
just
a
went
good
to
topic. Yeah, we should get in. I don't know. So here's one thing that happens at work. People like to. Some of our docs like to go down rabbit holes, and some of the more practical docs, when that doctor leaves, once they've done, once they've signed off on their patients, the other doctor leaves, and then the new doctor goes, yeah, I don't know why we did all that, because it's not, finding out those test results are not going to change the clinical course for the patient. I'm not going to do anything different for that test. So why do that test? And I think that also applies to us on a certain level, where it's like we can go super deep on some of these things. And it's fun because it's fun to learn about science, especially because it's not fun to learn about science in regular K through 12 education in most places. And it's fun when you're learning about science when it's driven by a passion and something you care about. But there are probably instances where, like, and dude, I see this in our Discord all the time, where we get real deep on something, and I'm just like, man, this has probably even gone deeper than I can go or want to go, because I'm always going, will this change how I can grow mushrooms? Will this change, my ability to identify
give
an
me more
amanita?
weight.
Right. Yeah. That's some PhD stuff. Right.
Yeah,
That's like,
seriously.
you need to know that to get your PhD. Or anyway. All right. So we did FAE. We talked, we dispelled this whole like more oxygen, less oxygen. It's not about that. It's about CO2. We talked about diaper tech. I think that's a great people. I regularly see newbies who send me pictures. I just had a guy send me one, and he was like, are my apes done? And I looked at the picture, and of course, every time they want this information, the photo's low quality,
Yeah.
not focused, but
2 meters
somehow
away.
in a fuzzy room from 100 feet, I'm supposed to be able to tell you if your tub's looking okay. But anyway, so he sent better pictures, and I was like, the cake looks pretty dry, so you're probably done. Like, you can rehydrate that cake, but in my experience, the fruit you got right now are done. You're rehydrating for your next flush. You're not rehydrating to fix a screw up with your cake drying out. Shit, why did I bring that up? What were we talking about? There's my first ADHD.
I'm still thinking about BRF cakes.
Yeah, I'm with you. But yeah, that whole I think I was trying to talk about like how to give good advice for people about this stuff.
Oh,
And
about how one doctor will overwrite another doctor's opinion.
right. It's just important to always. No, I can't. I don't even know why I brought that dude up. But anyway, yeah, guys, if your cake dries out and you are going, oh, I should rehydrate it so my fruit will keep growing. It's like those little wind up cars, right? Where you like go vroom, 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 and then you set them down and they go. And then there's a point where they stop. And I feel like in a lot of cases, in most cases, if you've screwed something up in the growing parameters and they stall, just get them out. Just harvest them. Fix the cake. If it's the cake, fix the temperature, fix whatever was wrong, and wait for your next flush. And you'll probably get it. Anyway, okay, so
It's a hard lesson but make sure you learn something from it.
yeah,
But I mean,
exactly.
I have got to half a garbage bag full. Like I throw a half a garbage bag full every day of just
Yeah,
stuff I don't want to look at. If it gets
yeah,
too depressing, it gets to a
yeah,
point where you don't
yeah,
want to look at anymore. Just throw it
yeah.
away, move on.
It's like where you're trying to save a baby and you're like, nope, this baby's gonna drown.
Yeah,
You
just
just gotta let it go.
sometimes you gotta
Yeah,
call it, man.
yeah,
Call it, cut your losses.
yeah. That reminds me of so when I lived in Los Angeles, there's a handful of really expert bonsai cultivators out there. And I study with a guy named Roy Nagatoshi out there in Sylmar, and he's got a little nursery called FUNGUY Bonsai Nursery. His dad was first generation from Japan. He had picked up a lot of these practices. So his dad and a couple other guys, John Naka, were the first to bring bonsai over to the United States, period. Before that, the Japanese, man, they were like, stay out of this. We got this. You don't know what the hell you're doing. So those first generation immigrants brought this horticultural, ornamental horticultural practice over here. And so I got to learn from this guy. And I would go to a class usually once a week. And people would come in, and newbies would come in, and they would bring in nursery stock. So a classic thing, you're looking for Yamadori. You want things that are mature, 20, 30 years old. Like, you're looking for the nursery stock that got forgotten about. Way off in the back. For most people's landscaping, it's not appealing, but of course the nursery is not just going to throw it out. Those trees are usually in 25 to 50 gallon containers. They usually find a tap root through the bottom, and if they get a tap root, they're not supposed to, of course, but they do. The trunk of that tree will start to taper, and this is what Japanese bonsai artists will take 50 years to create. And they never even see the final tree because it takes so long to do this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, if you think mushroom cultivation is slow, bonsai is definitely a slow process. But anyway, so sorry, try to do long story short. So these newbies would come in with these found Yamadori nursery stock, and just be this big bush. Sometimes it'd be bougainvillea, olive trees, ficus, whatever. And so then Roy would go, okay, we're going to do the first significant work on this tree. And in most cases, it amounted to taking a giant bush, literally maybe, 3 foot roundish bush, and just murdering it down to a little stump. And some people would get mad. Some people would leave. Some people would go, I can't do it. And he would say, that's the difference between a master and an amateur, is I know what to do and how severely to do it. Because once I do that, that root structure is still there. It's still going to grow. But it's that willingness to do the bold move. And I bring all that up because I think in one of the stages you get to in cultivation is that knowing when to toss them, right? Know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah, know when to walk away, know when to run.
For trichoderma,
I love that. I love that song.
Yeah, that's how I know we're the same generation.
Yeah,
but it's true, right? I think a newbie
islands in the stream.
All
that is what we are.
Old school, man. All the youngsters aren't gonna know what the hell we're talking
Oh,
about.
they know because they read it that Nas. I think Nas and somebody.
Oh, that's true.
That's
true.
Ghetto superstar.
Yeah, but they sort of know it. They don't know it. They don't know the original, right?
Yeah, they don't know Dolly.
Yeah. But anyway, long story short, the point is the new grower doesn't want to let go, right? Can I save it? Can I save it? Can I cut this trike out? Can I do this? The experienced grower goes, I did that. That is not worth it. Just move on, start fresh.
So, yeah.
Right.
So sacrifice the rest of your grow is ridiculous.
To save.
No, grain is not that expensive, and neither is coir. And so, like, if you're gonna sacrifice not only that grow, but subsequent grows because you're trying to save half of a tub, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, so counterpoint, if you're a bag grower, no harm, no foul, just leave it. See what happens. We just had one of my mods, Rufus Red. He had he was doing, I think it was the iceberg grow along, and his bag contaminated. And I was like, toss it, bro, toss it. And he was like, nope, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna watch biodiversity unfold. And I was wrong, and he was right. He got some really great looking fruits out of it, and ultimately the fruits won. Now, that's the exception to the rule. I mean, in nature, trichoderma wins, but
bags are a different story. That's funny because a lot of the people that ask me questions, they'll send one of those fuzzy pictures and be like, "Should I throw it away?" And it's like they just want you to tell them it's
Oh,
okay to
you're
throw it
right. Yes,
away.
that's
Like
probably
it's
true.
okay, don't worry. You've got more core, you've got more spawn. Like it's
Right.
okay, you can throw it away.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's not. It'll go back into the ecosystem and
Right.
everything will be fine. You'll make more.
I never
But
thought about it
even
like
me.
that. It's probably true. Probably
Yeah,
true.
they just want the okay that it's like, oh, you can cut it off, like
Right.
pull the plug.
Yeah,
They just
it's
want,
true.
they don't want to make that executive decision themselves.
Yeah. Oh, when I was a salesman, one of the first things I assessed was, are you a decision maker? Are you terrible with making a decision? And I would change how I would relate to you based on that. So you're right. Some people probably are just looking for affirmation of
Yeah,
it's okay, throw it out.
like a little pat on
Yes.
the back. It's
Yes.
okay, you'll grow more. Don't
Exactly.
worry, you're gonna be doing this for the next 60 years of your life.
You're hooked now. There's nothing.
Yeah,
There's no psilocybin to cure your psilocybin cultivation addiction.
yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
guys.
Dude,
Yeah.
half the time now, if I open the tent, I'm like, yeah, something don't smell right. I'm just like, yeah, it's that
Pause.
one. I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Yep.
Clean it out, get rid of it. Because you'll be thinking about it all day.
Yep.
Like, wow, I smelled that funky smell this morning. What should I have done? And then you'll be at work and you'll be like, oh my God, I'm gonna go home at like 7 o'clock and there's gonna be like green spores everywhere, or some
Yep.
funky or bugs or gnats. And it's like, why the hell
Yep.
didn't I just throw that crap away?
Why didn't you? Well,
Still.
so for me, I'm trying to do the old pan thing right now, and so for the first time, I'm bringing poo sub into the basement, and guess I never saw gnats my entire life, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing little flies here and there
Oh,
because they like the smell of rotten
God.
meat. They like the smell of
Mhm.
dung, and the minute they smell it, they come from far and wide and start hanging out. You were the one to tell me that if you're getting fungal gnats, it's because you let something go, something got ripe, and they just found a way. So far, it's not in any of my grows, but I never saw flies down here. Minute I brought the poo sub in, it's attracting a little bit of that.
Yeah, they smell that stuff from I don't know where they
I
come
don't.
from, but
Yeah,
man, they're there. Doesn't matter if it's the middle of the winter or the summer, they're
100%.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
that's
So
why they
true.
use them for model organisms, Drosophila, that's like the fruit flies, that's why they use them for model organisms because they're just so prolific.
Right.
I
Easy to
don't know how they
study.
do it.
Every scientist can get their hands on them. Yep.
Nobody
Exactly.
minds if you kill a million of them.
No one cares. Yeah. Oh man, that's a whole nother podcast. The what's going on in these scientific research labs and what we're doing to animals and oh yeah, no.
Oh.
That was a thing when we were young. I remember that coming up, some activists making a big deal about that.
Oh,
But
between me, you, I worked in a medical research lab for 3 years. Between me, you, and like Farrell, man, we could probably
oh yeah,
turn people's stomach.
probably.
Most people don't want to know.
They
They
don't.
don't want to know. They just really do not want to know what goes into medical research. Trust me.
You don't. No. You're right. All right. Um so I want to talk a little bit here before we completely leave that growing parameters talk. We talked a little bit. You brought up that I had brought up before, this idea that you frequently see the center of a
Oh
monotub
yeah.
underproducing or not producing at all. Um, I had a couple really gorgeous canopies, but where the center was just a little not as good as the rest, and of course that just drove me crazy. And I ultimately I cannot remember where this information came to me from, but basically the idea is condensation forms on the lid. It tends to drip down at the center. So in many cases, the center of the cake is not drying out as quickly. And so it's just behind and or remains too wet, whereas everything else is evaporating properly. But you brought up this idea that I thought was fascinating,
Yeah.
is that the center of your tub, as all this mycelia is colonizing the cake, and then it's going through this more complex metabolic process of, primordia, pinning, fruit formation, all that stuff. that there's metabolic processes that are making first the cake warmer and then maybe drawing temperature heat out of the cake. And so talk a little bit about what you were hypothesizing might be going on as far as temperature goes.
It is temperature, and I discovered this by making tempeh. Tempeh, you use rhizopus, which is a contaminant on our stuff, but you
Right.
inoculate it with this little starter, and it's basically rhizopus, like bread mold spores,
Yep.
and it's cooked soybeans, and essentially you incubate it like we would our spawn, but it happens over like a 12 to 24-hour period. And so it basically turns this whole, you cook soybeans or other kinds of legumes, and it basically consumes these soybeans and makes it into like a vegan burger, veggie burger.
Oh, okay.
And they get really, really hot. And so one day I picked up one of the cakes, and it was in a cool room, and I picked it up and I noticed the bottom center of this tempeh burger I was trying to make was really, really warm. So I pulled out my old, like,
Yep.
IR thermometer, and I hit it, and it was like 49 degrees, and the
Wow.
room that it was in was like Celsius. So it was like
Celsius, yeah.
like 110 Fahrenheit, and the room it was in was like 75.
Right.
And so I'm like, wow, it's making so much heat. And then what I realized when I tried making thicker tempeh cakes, I was trying to make sort of like a meatloaf kind of tempeh.
Right.
It basically killed itself. The center of the cakes, again, I
Got
was
too
measuring the
hot.
temperature, too hot, and the
Ah.
center would literally kill, the fungus would kill itself. And here's
What?
the other thing we were talking about that I'm now remembering. If it gets on the edges, it gets the fungus, and then it will sporulate, and it turns black with the rhizopus spores.
Mm-hmm.
Or Canidia, I guess they're technically, but and that's where it would only sporulate on the edges of the cake, and then you have this dead part in the center,
Right.
which is essentially bacterial anaerobic soybeans, which smell horrible, and they start to smell like ammonia, and you don't want to eat that. And so I read more about it. It turns out that these tempeh incubators that they use in industry, they actually cool them down. So
On
they put them on
purpose.
racks. Yeah, like our dryer racks or like a baking sheet, baking trays,
Right.
those cart things. They'll actually put them into incubators to cool them off
Right.
because the metabolism of the fungus is generating so much heat that it will kill
Right.
the fungus. And again, it goes back, it all makes sense now. If you go out to nature, where do you see an inch and a half of soybeans like being infected by a
Right.
fungus, right? It just
Right.
doesn't happen that
Right.
way. And it's the same like our stuff. Like, where in nature do you see like a 4-inch substrate block
Right.
in a mono tub in a
Yes.
room that's like, 75 degrees Fahrenheit? Like, that doesn't occur in nature.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, like where do you put 4 quarts of like actively metabolizing high nitrogen grain into a
Right.
small container and cover it up and be like, it should be fine?
Right. Yeah. It
Right?
doesn't happen.
It's not natural at all.
Yeah. So that's another paradigm shift. The same way that we were talking about. Let's not think about more or less oxygen or high or low oxygen. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the CO2. In this case, I had always thought that my side pins in a monotub, right, as the cake colonizes and fruit starts to form, it's sucking moisture out of the cake. The cake starts to shrink. You get this tiny little gap around the edge of the cake, and you could see little, micro beads of condensation forming in there. And in my head, I always thought that you're getting side pins because the humidity is just perfect there for those mushrooms. And in fact, the temperature is
Huh.
playing the role in the condensation. So really, the core idea is that the temperature is more appropriate for the growth on the edges versus the
Yeah.
center. So when you brought that up, the first thing I thought in my head was the next thing I'm going to do is when I grow in a tub, I'm going to purposely make the center a bit shallower than the edge and see if lower thickness might play a role in, like, I wonder if I can hack that
Yeah.
shape to play a role in that might be interesting. I mean, who
And
knows,
then
maybe
you'll
it totally
have
doesn't work, but
the perfect canopy.
who knows
Oh,
what
that
I'll who knows what I'll have. Yeah,
wow,
who knows.
yeah.
But yeah, and but that whole concept then plays into, cake depth, right? If you're on Shroomer,
mhm.
everybody says 3 to 4 inches, and in my experience, that is so much cake that
Yeah.
your odds of anaerobic activity go up. That's
Mhm.
why sterilization becomes more important, all that stuff. But I think it worked for those guys because I think the thicker cake did a better job of controlling the speed at which the evaporation process happens. And for
Yeah.
me, I've noticed when I somehow, through just dumb Joe Rogan guerrilla cultivation, happen to get it right, I think what happens is that the rate of evaporation is perfect
Yeah, there's definitely that sweet spot. And I'm
versus
thinking those Schumery guys were probably in Canada,
oh
where it would be colder.
right, sure, yeah,
So a
yeah,
thicker cake would make more sense
right.
because
Wouldn't have
they can
they can buffer the room buffers that a little bit, yeah. Who knows that, yeah. But anyway, that's fascinating. I just love anytime I thought it was one factor and then we have a conversation and then
no.
I'm like, oh, that could be the next layer of it, but it could really be about this thing. And it just has
Mhm.
me thinking little tweaks I'm gonna try, things when I think back to grows that stalled out and why did they stall, man, it's every little subtle parameter change that you make, right? Like no one is perfectly, unless you're brown treasure substrates or your dinosoil or your whoever, all these guys that all they do all day every day is make substrate in homogenizing in massive batches. If you're like me and you're intermittently mixing substrate, unless you're really utterly meticulous, there's going to be variability in your field capacity, right? Like you're going to totally hit it one time, you're going to not quite hit it another time. Up, you bought Cocoa Bliss this time, you bought Eco Earth the
Yeah.
next time. All these little things will have an impact on that. And so the variability you see in your grows isn't always just the genetics. It isn't always just, well,
No,
you didn't have a strong
no,
enough genetic.
no.
Nah,
The
a lot of
size of the
factors.
vermiculite too. Like I've noticed they sell here
Yeah.
2 to 4 millimeter and 4 to 8 millimeter. The size of that
Yeah.
vermiculite really matters.
Yeah.
And I screwed last month. I was trying to get rid of a bag of perlite, so I'm like, I'll throw a little perlite. Bad idea.
Yeah.
Don't use perlite.
So
It
it's
was
I deep dove on
rookie.
perlite. Now all these cannabis guys probably already know this. Um, but the perlite is for drainage,
Yeah.
whereas the verm will hold on to moisture. And so because if you know that, then obviously the size of the vermiculite and the stage at which you introduce, like, are you mixing your cocoa core and water first, letting it expand? Now you don't, you're boiling, so you've solved this problem by the boiling process, but a lot of people are not doing that. So are you adding do you just dump in vermiculite and right away? That's going to
Yeah.
cause the verm to grab onto water in a different rate than if you add it after you've hydrated your
Mm,
cocoa. So all
totally. And
those little things.
I've even if you like I've got say like I do it in a pretty big like pot, like a big giant soup pot. And if I make a batch and I don't use it all and I want to like add more to it so I can use it the next day or 2 days,
Yeah.
when I put that second round of vermiculite and that second round of coir in there, it's significantly different from
Oh
the
yeah.
stuff that was sitting there for a day already.
Yep.
It's
Yeah. Now
so
I remember you talking about, you're like, oh, look at my forearms, and because I'm squeezing this all day, right? And I remember thinking, why the fuck is he doing that? But now I'm like, it's actually, I mean, it's not smart from a labor perspective, but from
no.
accomplishing the goal perspective, it makes way more sense to start way too hydrated
Hmm. Yes.
and squeeze, right? Because if our field capacity test is, well, you squeeze it until there's just a drop or two, well, you're literally squeeze testing every fistful.
Everyone.
And so every time, every fistful is right because you squeeze until there's no more drops and then it goes in your bin. Squeeze
But
till there's no more
I grew
drops.
up in Michigan. I made a lot of snowballs. So
Right.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
essentially like making
Right.
snowballs. And I've gotten really proficient at it. I can make like 4 shoe boxes in about 30 minutes now, no
Yeah.
problem. I don't even think twice about it. You just get in there and you get
Yeah.
good at it.
Yeah.
It's like doing dumbbells or
Yeah.
whatever. You get really used to it really
Yeah.
quick. And I've tried like tortilla presses and swinging it around and think now if
Right.
you were to go bigger than I am now,
You would have to.
you would have to get a
Have to
better
do
way.
something else.
Maybe like a dryer or something
Right.
like that to centrifuge out the water.
Well,
But
have
there's
you
one more
seen?
thing
Real quick? Have you
before
seen? Oh, okay, go.
before coir quality. I had to do that because the EC on our coir here is way too high. The
Okay.
company that I buy it from, they stopped selling coir. Luckily, I've got a backup of it. But they won't sell it because it's mostly for the cannabis growers.
Yeah.
So if you get in Cocoa Bliss, it's well tested in the EC and the pH and all that. Here, it's
Right.
just like straight off the coconut.
Right.
You
Right.
know, like
Yeah.
it's not as like much quality control
Well,
as
some
there
of
would be
them,
in
the
the US.
sodium content is off the
Yeah, the
chain. A
sodium.
lot of people have like,
Hmm
soaked it in water and used, parts per million tester to test it, and it's like
Uh,
real high. So you really gotta be careful where you're getting it from. I have had great luck. Yeah, Cocoa Bliss is great, but a lot of people poo-poo Eco Earth. I don't have a problem with Eco Earth, though. I will say the substance of the core is superior for Cocoa Bliss. It's obvious that the Eco Earth sourcing of the core, they know that it's like for your reptile tank and that it's just going to
yeah,
get walked and shit on and no one cares about
yeah,
it. But it's so goddamn cheap, and I'm all about. I can drive 5 minutes down the road, go to PetSmart and pick it up. So
yeah,
I
for sure.
like that. But all those things to think about, man. It's it's a lot, but it encourages making very careful, measured changes to your growing process. I got
Hmm
I got a guy I helped grow recently, and he killed it because he listened and he did all the things I recommended he do, and so now he's just got these amazing flushes coming up. And if he's watching, don't get mad. But now it's all like, okay, now I want to do breeding, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, you've got a couple tubs under your belt. I've only been doing this not even 2 years, and I probably have hundreds of tubs,
it's
to my credit here.
the
Ed's probably doing
Scarface
that much in
syndrome.
a month, but yeah, like give us some time, man. There is more to learn. You have not encountered the problems and learn how to solve the problems. Let's just keep growing for a
To
while.
fix the
Yeah,
problem. That's it.
yeah,
The experience it doesn't mean you're gonna do it better or worse. It just means if there's a problem, you'll know how to fix it.
yeah, yep,
If you do
100%.
change something and if you don't have any experience, like a lot of the times trying to diagnose people's problems is they don't know what information to tell you and they'll
Right.
leave out things and you're
Yep.
just like a guy was asking me about LC the other day and I found out that he didn't put like any sugar in it.
Right.
Like he
Right.
put like some peptone and some other stuff, but there was like no carbohydrate
Right.
source and I was like, well,
Right.
that's but he like
Yep.
omitted, he didn't like tell me that. And he was like sending me countless pictures of like, why isn't it growing? And I'm like, I don't know. And then finally I was like, what sugar did you put in there? And he's like, none. Like, like, you know, I
Okay.
had another guy who
Okay.
was trying to pour agar and yeah, he forgot the LME.
Yeah.
He was just making water agar. And he was like,
Right.
why doesn't my fungus grow? And I was like,
Right.
well, because it's on water agar.
Yeah, we are very similar to fungi in that we need food, right? We're not doing photosynthesis. I'm not getting my energy from CO2. I need to eat some food.
Oh.
So that actually, I frequently call that, instead of saying a nutrition source, which sure, that's a more scientific way, to help newbies out, I just say you just need a sugar of some sorts.
Yeah,
I
sugar.
mean, there are superior or inferior sugar sources, but generally
Mm.
speaking, something with some sugar in it is going to work.
Yeah, the biologist would say a carbon source.
Right, which is carbon
Yeah,
and
which is
nitrogen
sugar.
are all they really need,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
goes
exactly.
into what we've heard you say many a time, which is,
Oh,
um, God, what grain, this grain, that grain, amendments, all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, if you did the math on the amount of like carbon atoms a given weight of mushrooms needed, they're probably getting it all. and to attribute it all
Yeah.
to this grain is superior to that grain, when you're not factoring out all the growing parameters and all the and the genetic quality, it's really hard to go for sure. I mean, the only reason I run popcorn is because I have no contamination with it essentially, and I like the prep on it. The reason you run patty rice, it's readily available, it
Yeah.
absolutely works, and it's cheap, right? Like
Yep,
those are the
that's it.
factors that should
Exactly.
be deciding this, not the nutritional profile of this is, 1% superior to
Doesn't
that
matter.
one, and they're
It's a
not going to
waste
use
of
up all
time.
that grain
It's a waste
anyway.
of
Look at how many flushes you get off of some spent ass grain, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just had I'm doing zaps, and I was told by somebody, let your jar sit. Let it really, really consume a lot more. Like waiting till your jar just fully colonizes and it's bright white does not mean that the mycelium has remotely used up all the carbon and nitrogen in that grain. So they recommended, they said, we have found that if you sit on those jars for a while, like a month past that, a couple weeks to a month past that, that it will make the mycelium, when it jumps into the substrate, a little hungrier and a little more aggressive. And that we found that speeding up what we find to be a slightly slower culture in the lab setting helps that out. And so far I knocked up, I did alderwood, and I fermented alderwood and alder sawdust, and for like a month, drained that all out, and then added just a little CV, just because I thought I just want this to look a little more like dirt. I just thought I'll just make it look a little more appropriate.
Yeah,
'Cause,
it packs in there better.
yeah, it just looks a little better. So I did that, and I mean, it's almost colonizing as fast as cubes, and I've been told, oh, it doesn't colonize that fast. So all that stuff, these little tips and tricks of 1 out of 10 times when you're hypothesizing what's working out in the wild for fungi, you might get it right. Oh, okay. Do I know why that works? I don't. I mean, I can theorize about it, but I don't know conclusively why. But it does make sense. I will say separately, the break and shake, right? That if you do, some people don't do 2 shakes, they just do the 1 shake to redistribute, speed up colonization. I do the 2nd shake just because it truly shows me just how fantastic or not fantastic my jar is, and then I can make a better decision about whether I want to run it. But if after that 2nd shake and it bounces back fast, if you're not in a hurry to get it in a tub, if you really let that mycelium find every little nook and cranny till it just looks like a blizzard in there, the brighter white that spawn is, in my just loose unscientific observation, it's a good move. Healthier grows, faster grows, less problems, just by not being in a big hurry to get that spawn.
Yeah, for sure. That second break and shake also to see if there is any hidden contamination
Right.
in there. If it doesn't recover in 24 hours, at least get a
Yeah.
little white and fluffy that you can just figure
Yep.
it's garbage.
Or what I find is if 2-3 days in, it's recovering, but I'm also seeing it's a wetter than it was after or
Yeah.
before the 2nd shake. Then I pop it open in front of the flow
Give it a
hood, I smell
smell.
it, and it's
Yep.
neutral. Everybody talks about fermented smell, sour smell, sweet smell.
Yes.
But man, if you don't just get that immediate earthy, mushroomy smell, there's something else in there.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's funny. There is that neutral. It's probably
Yeah.
not. There's like it seems like there's a lack of smell.
Yes.
It's
That is
almost
that's not right.
but that's not, yeah, that's
yeah.
not right. There should be some, like you said, that you get used to the smell
Yeah.
of mycelium. Except for the pan mycelium, that smells like very different. And also the ATL, the Tampanensis, that mycelium smells very different too. If you've never grown like the ATLs or the
I can't
Tampanensis.
remember. I've only run Tamps a couple times,
It
but I can't recall.
I don't know how to describe it. It's more like a nutty kind of smell. It's very, very distinctive. Once you smell it, you'll never forget it, but it's really,
It's
really
nutty
hard to
because they kind of
describe.
make nuts, right.
Yeah,
Maybe
you
that's
like
it.
little
Yeah, they
underground
make their little
walnuts.
underground nuts.
But
Yeah.
you'll never forget it once you smell it. It's like
Well, I forgot it, so
oh, oh, but if you smell it again,
then
you'll know.
I'll
Yeah,
want
yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Okay. So no, sorry, go. Didn't
ah,
mean to
no, go
interrupt.
ahead. I was gonna make a silly joke about
Oh,
something.
we got plenty of room. You make some more jokes. Okay, so next up on my list here, um, you did a post recently about Fresh Air Exchange Instagram account. They were the first. We got to give them absolute shout out and kudos to these guys. George Selhorn early on told me one of the fundamental problems in this cubensis, active mushroom space is there's no proficiency testing going on with the HPLC labs, and that needs to change. He actually said, "Hey, you should get into it, do it." I looked into it, I'm like, that's not going to be my scene. Um, but so he was the first to even tell me what proficiency testing was. And long story short, the idea is that if you have a bunch of competing labs who all want your work and all want your money, that you would want all these labs to participate in testing that might show potential buyers how close to the norm they are. Let's just say that let the data of a homogenized sample that gets distributed amongst multiple labs see who's looking close to the others, who's not. Look to see who's looking like their data looks like outlier information or kind of on target. So 100% shout out to Fresh Air Exchange on Instagram. These guys basically didn't do a legal formal proficiency center testing, but they just did their own. And so they homogenized the sample. They got it out to a bunch of labs. I think they did 5 labs, and then published the data sets. They anonymized it, so you don't know who's who. But of these 5 labs, there was quite a bit of variability in the testing data. So I don't know where I think Ed went to go find something, but let me pull this up real quick. This was from the Post. They called it
Yeah.
Pheno Hunter's Ball. And so they got these. Oh, I guess this is only listing 4 labs. I think they actually were trying to go for 5. I can't remember. But then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cultigens, all tested, homogenized samples. We don't know what sample prep protocols any of these labs are using. We don't know the actual protocols for the HPLC standards and all that stuff. We don't know where they're sourcing their standards necessarily. And we're just looking at the data, and there's a couple, I think lab 2 and 4, is that right? Those data sets were looking pretty close. And there was a lot of talk after they posted this about the variability in all this data. Like, you'd think if they all got the same sample that these numbers would be real close. Of course, I don't know the homogenization process. I don't know the sample prep process for all this, but let's just assume that everybody got essentially the same sample. We're seeing quite a bit of variability. Lab 2 and 4, probably the closest. So my initial thought of that was maybe they're using the same protocols. Maybe if they got the same, if we're assuming that the sample is the same, right?
Yeah,
And
here's
their
the
data's
pro.
the same, isn't it fair to go maybe they're running the test the exact same
No, because
way?
they
Okay.
would use the same protocol for the standards. So
Okay.
here's what you do when you do these kinds of tests. You set up literally what's called a standard curve,
Mhm.
and you will like titrate. So you'll have like basically you'll have a known concentration of, let's say, psilocybin, and have it
Right.
like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and you'll make
Run
literally
the
like a
curve.
curve, like a dose
Okay.
dependent curve. It'd be a little bit different in HPLC because it's like the area under the curve and things
Right.
like that, but the same basic idea, because you'll want to get the standard curve. So they would be using probably the same protocol for the sample as well as their standard in the
Okay.
same lab.
Right.
So lab number 2 would be using a different protocol, but it would be the same for the standard as well as the sample.
Right.
So that shouldn't affect the numbers that they got.
Okay.
Because
But
if they
how
were
they
doing
prepare the sample could,
it,
right? How
shouldn't
they're extracting
it shouldn't
it shouldn't.
it shouldn't because they should be getting the same numbers regardless of what, if they're using like acetonitrile or acetified methanol or ethanol or whatever, it shouldn't, because that's where the standard curve would make up for that.
I
See, if
see.
you're using like a different solvent, it would treat the same, the standard, which would
Right.
be, I'm sure, from Cayman or Usona or
Cerulean or
whatever.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, Cerulean, yeah, it would be from one of them, and so you would treat the standard the same exact way as you would treat the sample. So
Okay.
that's the whole point of having the standard curve, is that it accounts for the machine and the variability of that machine. So I used to run columns that were they were essentially, yeah, like an HPLC column. They had a fancy name for them, but it was the same basic idea. And yeah, you have to run a standard every time. Every time you do an experiment, you have to run your standards, at least
Right.
for that day, because you turn the machine on. Like these machines take hours sometimes to like boot up, and the columns got to warm up, and everything's got to equilibrate, and the pressures and things like that. So you have to run a standard curve essentially every day,
Right.
or every sample. I don't know exactly what they do. I think a lot of this variability is coming down to maybe the technicians, and I hate to say it, I was one of these technicians before. People make mistakes and
Sure.
people get sloppy, and I, I'm afraid to say that like I worked with some people that they say you don't have good hands.
Right.
So some people like if they were consistently higher, I could see maybe for lab 1 or lab 4 or whatever, then that could reflect a protocol, but it shouldn't,
Right.
right? It shouldn't. Like if you set a blood sample off to 3 different hospitals, you wouldn't expect to get different white blood cell counts, right?
Oh, no, 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 no. Yeah, you would
Yeah,
not.
so
Right.
so it's the same kind of idea, right? You should in your laboratory account for any difference in your sample prep, or your protocol. That's what the standards are for.
Okay.
So
So then, so what? So when you say error, I mean, because here you're having a couple labs, lab 2 and 4 are pretty consistent when compared to one another. Lab 3, the lowest reported values, and then you got, lab 1 is kind of doing its own thing. So like, how do you? I just don't know how you account for that. Like to me, and in talking with some of these guys, um, they're like, it's all about so for example, Ian Bollinger was just on mushroom, I forget the name of this podcast. It's a great podcast. uh
oh,
what is it? I think you know what I'm talking
uh
about.
yeah, 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 yeah.
God, no,
Oh
I feel bad.
gosh.
I'll have to look it up. But anyway,
Mushroom hour? No.
I'm gonna
God,
look it
what
up.
is it?
But anyway, so he was on and he was talking about how recently he's noticed that all the freeze dried samples are testing higher. And now I went back and I was chit chatting with George Selhorn of Flourish Labs, and he said, well, he goes, there is how much psilocybin there is in the fruit, and all we're doing is trying to accurately test it. And he said, if I was testing the same fruit that was dried in 2 different ways, and I was feeling like one drying method was resulting in a higher percentage, he said that to me would highlight a problem in my extraction protocol for the dried fruit. That maybe the freeze dried fruit was already allowing for more of the psilocybin to be available and readily extracted. So he said, if I ever ran into that, my first thought would be I need to relook at how I'm preparing my air dried samples. So I don't know.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that too. And that's unfortunate because that should not be what's happening.
Mushroom Revival. It's called
Yeah,
Mushroom
that's
Revival.
there you
Yeah,
go.
and
There
the
you go.
episode is Magic Mushroom Testing with Ian Bollinger from Hi-Fi Labs. That is it. But yeah, so all this stuff, I don't run these machines. I don't have a PhD. I haven't worked in the labs or anything like that. So that's why I'm always talking with you. I'm always talking with George. And when he said that thing about that his first thought would be that I have an insufficient extraction process for air dried mushrooms, that there's something that the
Yes.
freeze drying process is allowing for that's making it easier for the solvents to do what they do.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
That was another one of those moments of like, oh, this is why BRF cakes work, or this is another moment of, oh, if I'm not if I don't have an oxygen generating machine, then I'm not ever changing the oxygen content of my air. For me, it was another epiphanal moment of going, oh, that's like the totally other way of thinking about this, that most non-scientists are not thinking about it like that. And he said, well, so for me, I exhaustively look through the research, and I use, I think you called it an acidified methanol solvent of some sorts,
Yeah.
which seems to be the favored and preferred extraction solvent.
Mm.
And then he said he also sonification bath or something like that. So he's got this whole process that he does, to try to ensure, because just the way he said it, he said, well, if it's the same fruit prepared differently, freeze dried versus air dried, he goes, theoretically, why should I have any variability if it's the same fruit? If it's it shouldn't be widely variable, should be similar. And
Yeah.
for me, it was like a whole nother way of thinking about that issue. Oh, that could be the case. That's why I keep. Sorry, that's why I keep. We could do this.
Okay.
That's why I keep thinking. And so let me just say this so you can respond to it. I have to believe you're talking about human error. So for me, the human error, the machine is going to do what it's going to do. What are these technicians doing with the samples when they come in to prepare them for this standardized testing? That to me is where you could have issues. Are you letting it sit in your methanol for long enough?
That's what I mean by human error.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Is
what
that
you're referring to as the extraction protocol, that's where I'm saying human
is human
error.
error? Yeah.
Exactly. Did they
Because the
let
machine's
it?
gonna work. The machine's gonna
Mhm,
do what it does.
mhm.
It's gonna look for your spikes, and then for
Yeah.
HPLC, it's gonna say here's the theorized, percentage based on the volume of that curve and all that. That's gonna do what it does. Yeah, it's the what is the person doing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even with the color test with the M1, I don't know, I should say the M1, it's very, very specific about the weight and the time and the temperature. And if you don't get those parameters right, it's gonna vary
Right.
all over the place. So you're see, that's what I assume they're all using some variation on the acetified methanol.
Right.
And
You'd assume. Yeah.
but if you're letting it sit for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes,
Right.
that could be a major, major thing. So
Right.
that lab that's testing really, really high, maybe they're just like, well, we noticed if we let these sit here for an extra hour
Yeah. Who
in the
knows what they're doing?
extraction
Yeah.
buffer, they
Right.
get a lot higher.
Right.
And that's of course what people want. They want
Yeah.
higher.
Right.
They it's like all the cups. They don't really want like the real number. They want the
They
highest
want to
number.
win. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
At
So
the
if
end
you
of
would
the
have,
day, that is the flaw of the cup. It's great. It gets people
yeah,
interested in some science and all that. But yeah, that at the end of the day is it just becomes a game for, what are we doing ultimately with those potency numbers? That's to go buy my fruit.
yes, yes.
Right. So where I'm at, what I'm here for has nothing to do with that. Now, the knowing your potency, if you're using this in a therapeutic way, is important. But I'm not right. I don't care about potency for sales, right? I don't. It's like slapping organic, non-GMO on your label, right? It's another marketing tactic. I won the psilocybin cup. I won this cup, that
Oh,
cup, right?
geez, yeah.
All that stuff, which
That
is
goes to
cool. It's fun. It's something to do. I love all that stuff for sure. But I'm always trying to go, okay. So anyway, kudos for the Pheno Hunters Ball and Fresh Air Exchange. I think it was just a great talking point to begin what is George was convinced this is going to be the evolution. He said it happened in cannabis where man, the HPLC labs in cannabis were just, and he said remains all over the place.
Yeah, it's the same here, and I talked to some, there's like 5 dispensaries across the street from where I live, and they said they pay for higher numbers.
I'm sure they do.
I
Right.
just saying,
Yeah.
oh, it's corruption, and well,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is, you know. I hate to say it, man. Your purple Urple that tests at 38% is gonna sell out the next
Right.
day, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't imagine it affects some 18-year-old kid chucking a handful out of a Ziploc baggie into his mouth, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
gonna affect a lot of, it's
It's
gonna
gonna.
affect things. You're
Yeah.
gonna go down in history.
The annals of history
Yeah.
of cubensis growing. Yes. Right. Now, but good. I love that these guys did that. I love that it became a talking point. I know you've been pretty much like, who cares, right? Just eat mushrooms. And I hear that and appreciate that, but I just look at cannabis and go, wow, but this is going to be a thing. Like, so let's
Oh, for
talk about it.
sure.
Let's try to educate people so that just because somebody says this is the percentage, maybe not. I've seen
Well,
the
see
numbers
what?
on some of these balls. One year you're like, wait, what are these numbers? Like these numbers haven't been reported in scientific literature ever, but now all of a sudden you're doubling the psilocybin content. I'm a little skeptical on that stuff, but
Yeah, that's hard
who
to
knows?
believe.
Who knows? That's like
But
taking
when
a
we,
Yugo and going at, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Nope. Nope. That's not what Yugos do. Lamborghinis might do that. Right. But
and
so
then
anyway, yeah, that's my talking point about that. And you did a post recently. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. We're going to continue to talk about it. HPLC is not going anywhere. I personally think it's going to be very valuable for looking at and helping everyone understand the tryptamine alkaloids. I think, the tryptamine alkaloids for mushrooms are going to be like the terps, bro, for cannabis.
that's what I was
And
just gonna say.
yeah, so this is the terps, bro.
It's all
This
about
is
the
our
Bayo system,
yeah,
bro.
this is our terps, bro.
Bay,
This yeah.
Bay squad, what terp team or whatever, but it's the
Yeah.
Bayo team, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um
was
so we got to
I was
talk about
rocking
it.
out to some of that origination, man.
Right. Man, and so you're the chemist, I'm not, but as I keep reading more and more about this is this cyclical process with these tryptamines, right? So like even when you're measuring it, it's kind of like when I do an EKG at work, right? And people go, "Oh, that was fast." And I go, "It's just a 6-second snapshot of your heart. It's just a snapshot." And I feel like the HPLC, it's a snapshot. That sample, that moment. So until you have robust data sets, what does a HPLC result say? It says that specific sample at the time of testing tested right here. And then now I was just reading an article. Hold on. This article, which I think we're going to talk about down the road in a lot more depth. It is DNA authentication and chemical analysis of psilocybe mushrooms reveal widespread misdeterminations in fungaria and inconsistencies in metabolites. That paper, I think you've seen it.
Yeah. I've seen it.
But one of the really interesting things in the paper was that they were saying, so for like the psilocybe cyanescens, holotypes, and old herbarium samples, they said they were getting like impressive psilocybin numbers off of 50-year-old samples. Obviously not everything that was there 50 years ago, but significant quantities of psilocybin 50-year-old samples in psilocybe cyanescens. And then they said, let me see, make sure I'm not saying this wrong. They were saying, yeah, here it is. Okay, so I can even show it. The psilocybe cubensis of it measures psilocin, psilocybin, tryptophan, baeocystin, or baeocystin. But if you look at the cubensis, let me get this right. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. This is the cubes. So they're 50-year-old samples. Nothing there. Middle one is psilocybe cyanescens, old samples. You got some movement on that graph. The
Um,
how do you say this other? This is the type specimen, right? Semilanceata.
oh,
What?
Semi-Lanciata, yeah, that's the Liberty
Semilanceata.
caps.
Okay, the Liberty caps. They I mean you see it falling off, right? Like this is all the curve, this is based on how old the sample is. So newer samples, lots as time goes on lower, but it's really fascinating. Sorry, I'm not getting the light right. I thought it was fascinating that Psilocybe cyanescens was holding on to that psilocybin. Like, what's that all about? That immediately had me going, that's what I want to talk about. What's in there?
It could
50-year-old
be their
samples got a lot
it
of psilocybin. Okay.
it could be their drying procedure. Man, you
It
gotta,
could.
this is one thing, if we get any, that we could go on about this for hours, but the one thing about the freeze drying, you're breaking open all the
Yeah.
cells, they get
Yep.
oxidized. So there's two main things you want to do. You want to get rid of the water and you want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. All of these enzymes that are breaking down, doing whatever things and oxidizing and
Right.
polymerizing and oligo blah blah blah. If you remove water, they don't have a solvent to do anything. So you want to
Yeah.
remove the water as quickly as possible. I see a lot of younger growers, they'll just sit them on a windowsill or they'll do
Right.
crazy things like just let them sort of air dry. If you're going to do this, invest in a $30 food dehydrator.
Right.
Get those things dry as quickly as possible.
Right.
And if you're like some people do, like drying them on the hood of their car or whatever,
Right.
that is not going to preserve the alkaloids.
Right.
Imagine like an old Chinese herbal medicine shop, like in Gremlins or something,
Right.
you walk in there, old like medicine
All
shop.
dried.
Those things have been dried for like 50 years,
Right.
and I guarantee they're still active for,
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
potency thing they want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's interesting you say that, because that you were also the first person and maybe the only person really talk about that. You were saying the enemy's the water, so get it out as
yes,
soon as possible. So
yes.
high heat, sure. Is there was a point in that recent paper, I don't think I have it. I forget what the title of it was. It's basically the only paper where they've really looked at the effects of temperature, light, all that kind of stuff on potency. But basically, it was slowly losing potency as temperature went up, and then it sort of fell off at a certain point. But it was very high. I mean, it was, close
As
to
long as you're not
200 degrees.
cooking them. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. As long as you're not cooking them. So that's the problem is if you're boiling them because the water's still
Right.
inside the
Right.
mushroom and you've
Yeah.
got your dryer set to where it's actually like boiling the
Yeah.
water.
Right.
But if you're doing like, 200, but let's say 180, 170, 180 Fahrenheit, that's fine.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it, it
I
As long as you're
I
not
listened to
boiling
you.
them or like like
Right.
like
Right.
don't put them in
No.
the oven at 350 or anything
Right.
like that. But
Yeah. Yeah. You're good. Um, and then you do, I know you like you dry them with, you don't cut the ends. You're trying to
yeah,
preserve the whole
I just
fruit. That might
rip
be the
the whole thing.
taxonomist and herbarist in
Yeah, you're
you,
right. You're right. Those
but you're
Amanita vulva, like, yeah, you don't
yeah.
want to miss that. That's for sure.
Yeah. But on the flip side though, if you're thinking about the water and the oxygen and all that, preserving the fruit make a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. That's what I crank my dehydrator the hottest it can possibly go, the quickest it can possibly dry it out. And then the other thing that I don't notice, some people are real big about, oh well, like the bare minimum time. But once you've dried the fruit, it's now like it's in its natural home. There's
Hmm.
no, you don't have a polar solvent with the water that can trigger the dephosphorylation
Yeah.
process with
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the it it's pretty preserved, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
that.
All these things are about it's about water, getting rid of that
Yeah.
water. And the second thing, because like that one paper goes into a lot of the details, it's the water that allows the oxidation to occur and all these free
Right.
radicals, and then you get the
Yeah.
oligomerization. That's where we get the blue color from.
Yeah. That, I mean, that's
Um,
that whole process, right? It needs
yeah,
that
it needs
hydrogen's
water.
ion to do whatever they do.
It just needs water. I mean, even if you just think about the food industry, what do you see when you open a bag of chips? Like here, at least, they've got a silica pack in them. Because I don't know about in America, but here, they don't know how long it's gonna. They'll put literally like a silica gel and even sometimes oxygen absorbers.
Wow.
So here, if you want to be really, really super, get oxygen absorbers. Those preppers. If you want to be like super duper like prepper style, silica packets and oxygen scavengers or oxygen absorbers, they're a little packet of powdered iron powder,
Hmm.
basically. And they will suck in that last little bit of oxygen and vacuum seal those suckers in, really, really
Yeah.
thick bags. And they will last for decades. Decades.
I mean, reading this article, I'm like, it will.
Yes. And so not that you're gonna stop growing anytime soon, nobody will, but it's
Oh,
kind of nice, to
yeah,
know
to
that
know.
they'll be good. Because when you start to like accumulate, like you've said, I've heard you said many times, and
This
everybody
is
knows, after that first
too
mono
much.
tub, yeah, you've got like a personal supply for like 3 months.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
even if you're, doing the 10 gram a day
yeah,
wombat
yeah.
protocol,
Right,
they
right.
got the
The
Fadiman
Wombat Protocol.
protocol and the Stamets protocol. Yeah,
Uh,
Dave should write that up. Be like, well, you take 10 grams a day for 3 days and then 1 day off and then 20
right,
grams.
right,
Don't forget your
right,
niacin, your B vitamins, your
right.
lion's mane.
Oh, that's the crucial part. Yeah, yeah. Dude, we're gonna get into that. I'm queuing up a bunch of people who went to the MAPS conference, and we're gonna get into what that was like and some thoughts about that
I'm
and all
curious
that.
to know.
That's gonna be about as political as I get. But I definitely I have an opinion, and I think a lot of my guests do, and
Yeah.
I think it's worth chiming in and thinking about this stuff. Some of it we're not gonna have any say on. These people with a lot of money, they're gonna keep doing whatever they want to do. Like just rule of thumb, you're not rich enough to sue Donald Trump. That guy's got, 14 full-time lawyers and he'd just bury you in litigation. You're never going to win. Right. But
Well,
what do we have control over? And we have agency. We have never in the history of modern, last 150 years has the random guy ever had more ability to get a message out to the world. And so we do have some agency, and we're going to talk about all that stuff.
well, that's
Uh,
exactly what you're doing and what we're
yeah,
doing right now.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. This kind of medicine, I could teach a 10th grader how to
yeah.
do it. I could teach a 75-year-old like grandma how to do it. Like,
My 8-year-old's not bad. She's getting pretty good. By the time she's 12, she probably gonna be running a lab down here for me. So yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
rocket science once you get dialed in for sure.
They'll probably be better at it than us.
Well, yeah, that's the hope, man. That's
The
the hope.
student becomes better than the teacher, right?
Yes,
That's
that's
the
what you
goal
want.
of being a teacher. You want your students to be better than you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. 100%. All right, dude. Well, we're minute I when I get going, it's hard to stop. It's fun to talk. It's fun to talk about these ideas. So it's thanks for being on. We didn't even get into. We'll have to do it again here shortly
Oh,
and talk about what you're up to
oh
because
yeah.
we haven't gotten into any of that stuff yet. I want to know, for a hot second you were doing. I mean, I don't know
Crosses.
how many crosses you're up to. I mean,
I'm
are we
doing
over
blob
50?
crosses now. Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
around there. I've got probably 3 dozen monos, and now I've got tattoo CKB and Enigma blobs, and I think
Nice.
somebody's sending me a toke blob, or
Cool.
toke.
Toke, yeah. Toke.
Is it toke? Okay, toke
Toke.
blob.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll have 4 blobs and about 3 dozen, so that's like about 140 crosses. That'll do the diamond thing.
Yeah.
Playing with the tent. I'll make some more tent videos.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed that there wasn't much more on tents. I thought
Yeah.
there would be mycology tent stuff all over, but it's all cannabis tents,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can buy that out my front door for like $5 a gram now.
Yep. Yep.
Saturated. The market here is so saturated.
I
It's
know
like they're just like,
many people who are just like, yeah, I was growing, I was really good at it, but there was a point where I said, but man, it's just so cheap now. Because you can't compete with these big grow
no,
ops, man.
it's impossible,
It's
man.
all it's literally automated now.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Stunnin21 was telling me about a place where, it's all on an assembly line now. Like it moves
Mm-hmm.
from this room to that room at various stages. It's the whole cycle's automated. All they have to do is just walk around and keep their eye on everything, make sure all their devices work, and
Hmm.
they're good. They
Yeah.
consistent, amazing product every time. Yep.
Yeah, they'll be just like like a petroleum plant or something like that, like a
Yeah,
plastics factory one of these days. Yep, everything just on rollers and
exactly.
yeah, it seems like it takes I mean I won't get on a big old topic, but I kind of like that we can still do this in our home.
Yeah.
Like you can literally in a spare bedroom, you can make as much
Yeah.
as your little heart desires and probably 40 of your friends.
Yeah.
Like, and it's
And if you don't overdo it, if you're not like me and you don't go all in right away and you don't, I mean, look at this freaking lab. I mean,
oh man, I don't
dude.
want to think.
And
I
I'm like not
oh,
growing to distribute, right? Like this is just for me. This is just my hobby here. Um, but yeah, it doesn't have to be like this. I keep telling people, man, I'm gonna tell you what text to use. This can be minimal and you'll pretty hands off. And boy, oh boy, if you're willing to, if you don't fall victim to you have to learn how to do every step of every part of the process, if you're really just here to get some fruit for yourself, and you pick and choose like, okay, I'm going to just buy some substrate. I'm going to buy some
that's
grain.
it.
This gets a lot easier for people.
Yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to succeed now.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
like you don't
yeah.
have to pour agar. You just
Right.
get a LC syringe and jack it into
Yeah.
some. It's awesome. If you could have done that 30 years ago when I was
Right.
running those BRF Tech cakes or the
Right.
PF Tech cakes, if I could have done that, I would have done that in a second.
Yeah. I mean, you just, you always have to be asking yourself, what are you doing this for? What do you want?
Mhm.
Is it for the cultivation? Then yeah, buy a Nikon E200. I think I'm up to like 5 shelves at this point. Buy the industrial flow hood, buy the stainless, do all that stuff, right? If you just want the medicine and you don't want to buy from a guy, on the corner who you don't know, if you
Yeah.
want to have control over the quality and what you're getting, Higher Peaks just talked about this on one of the recent episodes. He was like, I just didn't, the quality of what I was getting where I was at was just
Yeah.
garbage. So I wanted to have control over that. He's like, I had that experience with cannabis. So I wanted to have that with mushrooms. And I think a lot of people are going to be in that situation.
Yeah, for real. That's exactly why I started growing like 30 years ago was because I didn't trust the stuff
Yeah.
I was getting.
Right.
It was like way too shady and also it was like kind of hard to get. It was
Right.
like, man, I got to meet this guy on Friday night and blah 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 blah. It's like, why don't I just grow this stuff
Right.
myself? Like,
And super dependent. I mean, dude, when I was young, I remember uh, it was like it was almost like exotic fruit at the grocery store. Like you go to the grocery store, oh, star fruit. They haven't had this for a while, right? The shrooms were the same way. I was like, oh, you didn't have shrooms for a while. All of a sudden, I guess, the kid down the road's, got a flush and now he's got some fruit. And so I was like, oh, we're
yeah.
doing mushrooms now because here it is. Yeah, you had no control over
So
that.
so hit and miss, yeah.
Yeah. So hit or
But you
miss.
did them when they came around. You did
You
them
just did
because
'em.
that was the
Yeah,
only chance you might get for the next 4 months. It's like,
correct.
like
Yeah,
somebody's got an eighth. Oh,
yeah. And it was always a small amount. So it was like, man, if you happened to talk to the guy at the right time and he had
oh,
some, you had to take them. I mean, don't
I
miss your
know. It was
opportunity.
like crack, like you're buying crack or something.
Yeah,
It's like, man, I'm
yeah,
too many things.
yeah. I mean, I was just on Facebook Marketplace trying to sell some speakers here. I got these big old studio monitors that I originally bought when I was getting back into music production, and now I got no room for them, so I'm gonna have to scale down the size of my monitors. I'm not doing any mastering or real mixing here anyway. So anyway, I was posting that, and I just happened to see a few things. I guess because Facebook knows I like mushrooms. Man, there are people just openly selling fruit and genetics
Yeah.
on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know this was going on. Instagram, Facebook.
Oh
It's
gosh.
everywhere.
They just because there's less like dispensaries everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
they're not like advertising it, but they're
Yeah.
not. It's not like something you're doing at a back corner
Oh,
anymore. It's
it's that way
like,
here. I mean, there are some dispensaries that are super by the book, and it's like, nope, we're not touching those mushrooms. But there are other dispensaries. They got chocolate bars, they got genetics, they got you name it, and just the risk tolerance of that owner's different, and no one's really doing these big busts on all that stuff because at the end of the day, it's small potatoes. What do you got? 10 chocolate
yeah,
bars in
yeah,
a case at a
exactly.
dispensary where everybody's there to buy weed anyway.
And
Like,
and what are they gonna do? Send them off for HPLC testing? That shit don't work.
yeah. And costs a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, speaking of that was something we didn't get into. So real quick, I do want to say this, right? The 𝐥𝐤𝐞 test, right? This reagent test.
Oh yeah,
Now,
that's what it's
so
called.
normally all these reagent tests are being used to test for the presence of something,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like law enforcement have lots of reagent tests. It's just saying, is there fentanyl in here? Is this cocaine? It's just a yes or no test. So the amount doesn't matter quite as much. But the minute you're trying to use a reagent test to test quantitative information, like you were saying, the sample size is crucial, and the amount of significant figures you have to go down to
Mm.
remotely create any trustworthiness in that test just gets it's a little problematic.
150 milligrams is such a small. I mean, that's like so a tiny, like
Yeah,
fingernail worth of powder.
right.
It's like
And
it's way so
if you measure 153,
yeah, or
what
even
does that do to your
200.
test?
If you look at back that graph, yeah, I mean those double numbers. Maybe the technician just accidentally didn't weigh very
Yeah,
accurately.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
you really need a real accurate scale. And the real accurate scales are crazy
oh, their
expensive.
weights, yeah,
Thousands of bucks minimum. And then what is it sitting on? Sitting on. If it's not sitting on a granite slab table,
yeah.
and it's also irrelevant, right? Like my sensitive scale, if I got my flow hood on, I got to turn the flow hood off,
Mm.
right? Because this vibration from that affects the. So I used to work at a metallurgical facility, and our like $30,000. We had electron microscopes, we had all sorts of crazy stuff, but the really our best scale was like 30 plus $1,000, and it sat on a dedicated table. The granite slab was this freaking thick, and like that table didn't move because the more significant figures and the smaller the amount you're weighing, the tiniest vibration throws that stuff off. So like no one's doing that, right? We
Nah,
bought a
nobody.
$15 scale off Amazon.
Yeah, I know exactly. And I don't, to be honest, after I actually saw a guy doing the procedure, and there's so many steps to it that I'm sorry that the average,
Yeah.
user is not gonna do those steps
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah.
I mean, these are,
Yeah. For me, from what I've seen, and oh my God, the amount of times I've had people message me go, yo, bro, I did the 𝐸 and it tested at this, but then I submitted it to this ball and it was only half that. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Because it's not a dependable test. I would listen to the HPLC number at least more than I would the reagent test number. I think at the end of the day, it's a tool that you could use to just ballpark some stuff.
yeah,
Is it in the basic cube category, or is it in the ape category? Or if you bought 20 of these and you were just trying to maybe test batches to see if they, based on how you were using it, as long as you were doing it repeatably, maybe you could, see how consistent the batch was. But I feel like the use is it's trying to be a replacement for HPLC, and it's just absolutely not. And as if you talk to Ed Grant for any amount of time, HPLC already has plenty of issues. So if that's got issues, then how many issues do these reagent tests have? Yeah.
yep. But it's nice to get a number, people. It's
Yeah.
like a talking point,
People want a
you know.
number for sure.
And if you were doing the test, to be honest, wanted to show off, like you might put a little bit more of your sample in there.
That's all you got to do. You don't even got to do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Odds are I don't even think most of these people are doing it on purpose, but they're just like, I got the most potent sample. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
look, it's
know.
just black. Now, of
This is
course, anything over 2, if I
that's not
remember
cool.
looking this up correctly, then the protocol was to use half the sample size, and then you could extrapolate from there. But then now the way these cheaper scales work, the lower the sample size, the less accurate they are. At higher numbers, they're more accurate because there's sort
Oh
of a sweet
God.
spot with the sensors, right?
Yes,
So there's
yes,
just so
exactly.
many freaking variables on that. When you, like you said, you're already dealing with a small amount of milligrams in the first place.
Oh God, 75 milligrams. That's like a ridiculous amount for an average person to measure out.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
But it's at least some f fun thing, It's
It's a thing.
it's
It's a
just a
thing to
fun thing
do.
to do. I wouldn't be getting too excited about it, but if you're bored and you want to
Right.
play with some colors,
You
test
can do that.
out.
And now you've brought up that, the lighting conditions matter. Now, I would say that
Yeah.
overall, you're not really using this honestly to compare to others. I could see using it for yourself. Like, I'm going to use this for myself as long as I'm measuring the perceived
Mhm.
coloration for myself consistently. I could maybe over time find some use in using this. I'm not saying these are completely useless. I'm just saying I think people don't fully think through how these work and what some issues can be and how important weighing the sample is. That
Yeah,
sort of thing.
of course. And it's like you said, even those HPLC numbers, if you're looking at like somebody made a comment about, oh, the one being stronger, and the difference was like a
Yeah.
0.02
Right.
difference, like that's
Right.
not significant,
Yeah.
you guys. Like that's like not something to say like this
Yeah.
one is first place and this is second and this is third. It's just wait, like standard deviation doesn't work
Right.
like that.
But if you win,
Whatever
right?
happened, just give them your friend and be like, "Hey man, test these. Like
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing. If you win, that's the problem. Is that there's like big money riding on this kind of thing.
Right.
Like if we ever get
Or
to the
I
point,
mean, it gets used as the social media hype vehicle for
yeah,
sure. That's the big point is, I like one of my buddies was like, "Oh, dude, I placed in the cup," and I was like, "Cool." And then you see the social media posts and all that. I mean, this is why it's being done. I'm not the average person that enters most of these psilocybin potency cups are doing it because they want to be able to go, "I won," or "I did way better. My variety is way more potent than people historically knew it to be." Or it becomes a tool.
well, here's the after you get some experience, you also realize it's the actual grow, the technique.
Yeah.
So better to focus if you're really wanting to grow good stuff, not just for bragging rights or whatever, but just learn to grow better.
Yeah.
Like after you grow a lot of tubs or bags, you can just know. I mean, I don't want to sound all hokey, but like you can feel like that they're good. Like you can just sort
Right.
of look and get like this vibe or like aura from them that you're like, wow,
Right.
that's gonna be scary. Like,
Right.
yeah, like I'm looking at some in my tent out there earlier today. I'm like, wow, like I'm afraid to touch it. Like, like this is gonna like osmosis
Uh,
through diffuse through my skin. It's like
right.
maybe I should put
Right. Right.
gloves on. Like I don't.
Dude, that was my dad. The first time he came over and he was helping me harvest, he didn't want to touch him, and I was like, you couldn't squeeze this
I,
hard enough to get it to absorb through your skin." And then yeah, and that was before I had Dr.
oh,
Rick, on telling me, "Well, dude, you might ingest 2 grams of this stuff, but do you want to know the amount of available psilocybin that ever actually is psilocin that ever actually makes its way into your brain is like a fraction of that." And
yeah.
I was like, "Oh yeah, so yeah, you
I
can
have.
probably touch these." And I mean, like I said, my 8-year-old loves helping me harvest mushrooms.
Oh
She
yeah.
she's fine. She
Yeah,
loves
my
it.
friend's always like takes pictures with her daughter who's like 5, and the mushrooms are like as big as her head. It's like
Right.
it's
It's
like
funny.
wow. It's like those people that hold a fish really close to the camera, like look how big it is.
That's the equivalent. Yeah. Yeah.
But one thing I have noticed, you got to be a little careful making capsules. You can like inhale a fair amount of
Oh,
dust.
sure.
I've been making capsules and like, wow, I get up to go to the bathroom or something, and it's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
oops. Like, I
My
think I inhaled enough to do the trick. I'm like, this is gonna be a fun. I'm
dang
on
dude,
like my,
you are grinding your powder then hardcore. But I do that too.
oh
I
yeah, I
because
use a
you can
coffee
same
a
here.
proper like grinder. It's got one of the it's one of those smoothie makers.
Yep.
And man, that thing will like its dust
Yep.
is
You
like
can
will like
also affect to some degree the weight per cap by to what degree you grind them up. I see a
oh
lot
for
of
sure.
the, ragtag, microdose sellers are it's like they got little chunks in there and I'm just like, yeah. So you don't got as much, there's not as much in there.
Yeah, and you want them to break open or dissolve and go into
Yeah.
your stomach or
Yeah.
your small intestine as
Yeah.
quickly as possible. That's the whole point.
Plus,
Yeah, man,
if we don't digest chitin, it would make sense that you would want to mechanically break it down as
for
much as
sure.
possible. Yeah,
Oh yeah, and every blender now sells a coffee grinder with it, man. Just grind them as much. And that means that you got to make sure they're perfectly dry.
perfectly
You
dry.
know,
Yeah,
perfectly dry. Like even if before I'm making capsules, I'll throw them on the dryer for a few
yep,
hours just to
yep,
make sure they're like cracker dry.
yep.
Because yeah, you don't want to get them in the capsules and have them halfway wet or like they got to be 100% dry for those capsules. And then of course store the capsules with silica gel, just
And
like
man,
medicine,
I've
right?
never bought the oxygen absorbers. I've heard you talk about them. Now, all I do,
They're
I mean,
pretty
I
cheap.
dry the ever loving bejesus out of my
Yeah.
fruit. There are times when they sit on that dryer for 24 hours. They only needed to be on there for 6 hours. And you know what? They work. Trust me, they work just fine. I mean,
Yes.
I am not losing by sitting them on there for a
No.
really long time, 24 hours, because they're going to rapidly, just like Ed is saying, they're rapidly losing their water content. And then once they're completely dry, that psilocybin and the other tryptamines are just sitting in the cells they're sitting in with no oxygen, or I'm sorry, no water to trigger any process. They pretty much stay put. So I'm not. I'm almost certain of it. Although there's no test on this, but I'd love to. And I don't even think you could do this test. But the drying it for 8 hours versus 24 hours at the same
It
temperature, I bet
I
it's
can
like
tell
almost
you
no difference.
there's no difference
Yeah.
from mine and my friends. She's been doing this like 12 or 14 years on a much larger scale than me.
Yeah.
And we never, neither of us never have complaints. And sometimes they'll sit 3, 4, 5 days, you know.
Yeah.
If you've got a dryer, maybe it's one of those. Do not store them if you think they're almost dry.
No.
Do not store them. Leave them on there another day. Like once
The
they get
cracker
dry,
crispy, that is
cracker
the
dry.
perfect language. I have, as someone coming into the space, as I've been learning, that is the perfect term for it. Crispy.
Yes.
Crispy. It should make a noise. If when
Yes.
you crush
Exactly.
it doesn't make a crunch, it is not dry.
That's
Now,
it.
to be fair, I know George has told me numerous times. He said, "Man, for the most part, the samples people are sending me, he's like, as my methodology, I'm both checking and re-drying just to confirm they're dry. But when he gets a sample, he said almost everybody sends me just bone dry samples. So I think as a general rule, most people are doing it right. Because man, you only gotta make that mistake once, right? Open up a
Yeah.
bag that you freeze dried and or some of these guys that are selling it, they sell it to somebody, the guy opens it up and it's just off and ripe and goes bad real fast, and you're only going to make that mistake once before you go, okay, I might, maybe I'm losing a teeny tiny percentage of psilocybin, but if I can store it for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's probably worth it in the long run.
Yeah, for sure, man. Dryer, there's some minor investments that are well worth it.
But you
Like a
can get
$30.
a dryer for $30. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it
exactly.
is not expensive. It is
One thing,
just
can we
not.
real quick say this freeze
Yeah.
dryer thing? They cost $3,000.
Oh, minimum,
You do
minimum.
not need a freeze dryer.
Yeah.
Whoever's trying to sell freeze dryers, I mean, we could go into why, but the point for right now, do not buy a god darn freeze dryer unless you've
Yeah.
got a hood, five 75
Yes,
X's,
you got all
like
of it already. Yes,
yeah,
for
buy
sure.
all the other stuff before you ever
Yeah.
think about buying a god darn freeze
Yeah.
dryer.
Now, I will say,
It's
I don't, there's not many people buying these. This is not a fad. This is not, there
oh,
aren't
is
people
okay.
that are like, God
I was
dang it,
getting
somebody talk
worried.
to me. No, 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 no.
I
And
was getting
everybody I
worried.
know that has them is either, so there's a few guys in my Discord who do, those guys are growing big bulk. They are selling fruit and they are doing it for one reason. Bag appeal is phenomenal.
Oh
They
yeah.
look amazing.
Hmm.
So they're
Yeah.
doing it for that reason. That's a bottom line issue. And then I know some people who are using them, but they are not just freeze drying their mushrooms. They're using it for many other things. They're freeze
Mhm.
drying candy and shit and selling it on Etsy. They're using it for multiple reasons. The market right now for freeze dryers are really the homesteaders, the preppers, that people who are trying to create,
Oh,
that
okay.
homesteader industry. You got people sitting around doing nothing all day but just imagining when the zombie apocalypse comes and seeing how long they can live for.
Yeah, yeah,
um
okay. Okay, so people aren't
yeah,
just buying
no,
them
no,
to
no, no, no,
dry their
no,
darn mushrooms.
literally the only people are the people that
I was
absolutely know what they're doing. I've
okay.
never heard anybody go, oh, so should I get a freeze dryer? I mean, it's just too cost prohibitive.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
nobody's doing that.
I
um
thought people were putting that before the list, like, oh, laminar flow hood
no,
or
no, 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 no.
FFU or a freeze dryer. Like,
Right.
which one do I need
Yep.
first?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Nope, I am not seeing that. But the people who are buying them, I think they're making prudent decisions. I've never heard anybody that has bought one in those two realms regret buying it. I mean, man, if all you do is freeze dry Skittles and sell them on Etsy, you're making money hand over fist. For every $1 of Skittles, you're making like $30 on the back end on it. So as long as you get your packaging right and promote it a little bit, they sell themselves.
Yeah, and if you're moving a lot of volume, the freeze drying's irrelevant. The only problem I have against freeze drying is that they're gonna oxidize faster.
Yeah, so
But
George
if you're
George
moving the
Selhorn,
product,
he said he has noticed that, and I guess he said there's some literature that corroborates this, that on the front end, short term, that the freeze drying does seem to liberate the psilocybin
hmm
very well. That very well, very very well. He said long term shelf life is poor.
that's the problem. Yes.
So, but now if I'm selling in bulk, if I'm growing and selling in bulk, if I'm moving product and the people who are buying it are, they're going to their festival next weekend, they're using it
Yeah,
right
no
away,
problem.
doesn't matter. They they're
Yeah, you're
they're
right.
cool with that.
If you're in the parking lot selling out of your VW and they're gonna use it like the next 20 minutes before they walk in the
Yeah, they're
doors
gonna
of the concert,
they're
it's
gonna
not
buy
gonna
the
matter.
prettiest one.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're gonna
yep,
buy the
yep,
prettiest
for
one.
sure.
I mean, I don't do any of that, and I still love when a fruit dries firm, hard, like a little rock, right? I love those. I love having I
I
can
gotta,
freeze dry, or I can
yeah.
vacuum seal the crap out of them, and then if I unvacuum seal them, they're the same. They didn't crush, right? It's not like
Mhm.
Melmac or land races where, I mean, they just crumble into nothing.
I got a ODPE cross with a Schottky that I think is
Perfect.
gonna fit that bill
Yeah.
perfectly.
I mean, ODPE is like the for me the type specimen of everything you want in a fruit. I'm a big fan of that one. And your Shakti, speaking of that, I actually have it here. We can pull it up.
I pulled a albino off of, I got it. Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah, on
these
one
are
of my
cool.
other,
They look like ODPE that want to be Shakti.
yeah,
They do.
exactly. They
Yeah.
got the little wavy
Yeah.
cap.
Yeah.
I had a little trouble there because you were talking about relative humidity. I left my air conditioner on one day and I went out and I forgot, and the temperature in my entire house like dropped like too
Ah.
low. And so I don't know, you can really tell, but they went back vegetative.
Oh,
So some of the ones that like aborted there, they were looking really, really good, but the relative humidity got too high and they
right.
started to go back vegetative
And
again,
when you say
unfortunately.
that, just so people understand, you're talking about some of the myceliated caps.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's that where it's changed its mind and it's going back
yeah.
to we're going underground again.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yep, but those have been sitting there for probably a week. They don't rot or anything. They just aren't gonna keep growing into mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah. Cute. Oh.
Yeah, those are cool, man. I like these. You know, you just never know what these crosses are going to do.
Yeah,
You never
yeah,
know.
ooh,
You never
yeah.
know on
You just
F1, you
gotta
never
do
know
it.
on F8, you never know on F30 at any
Oh,
I
I
mean,
know.
you hear all the time. So you got to
Sure.
enjoy this process for sure. Um
Yep.
because you're going to do a lot of things where at the end of the day you're like, yeah, I might stop working this one. It's not
Yeah, that's what
my
sometimes you
heart's
got
not
that
in it.
one and you think like, oh, I don't want to throw it away because I'll never see it again or what. Yeah, you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
There's a
I just did
lot
that with
of,
yours. I finally said, okay, I got a bunch of flushes I got spores on, but I keep transferring the F1 plates. And I was like,
oh,
geeky, stop doing that. So I finally said, okay, what do I got swabs
exactly.
of? I got F2 swabs. All those I'm just because the game here now is let's move through the filial generations. Let's see what we can
Yes.
stabilize. So yeah,
But
I
that one looks
finally
so nice. You're like, I don't want to lose.
right,
Oh.
right. I would
Water
say
storage.
I'm still
Long-term water
yeah.
storage.
Oh, 100%. Okay, next episode we're gonna do long-term water storage. We're gonna do
Yeah, yeah,
we're gonna talk. We didn't get into scaling. We didn't get into some of your projects. So let's do a lot of
oh
picks.
yeah. The
We'll
grab
get
and
into all that
drags,
stuff.
the blobs, diamond crosses.
Oh yeah, yo, your diamond crosses with the blob was a very smart move.
Yeah, there's
That you basically the de-dikaryoticization thing just
a
became
dot just
not
die, just
totally
die. Not
irrelevant.
not D die, not D. Oh yeah, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
saying
yes.
on one level,
Uh,
right? De-dikaryoticization was all about, well, what do you do with blobs? What do you do with things you don't got
yes.
spores with? So you got to do this. And that was like, now I think without going into intricate detail, there
Another
is still a
episode.
reason to do that. I'm not
Yes,
saying it's irrelevant.
for sure.
But this, you've created sort of an in between that does allow people to, well, how do I cross these things I don't have spores on?
Yeah, that's
Diamond
exactly what I
cross.
thought.
Yeah.
Again, that was one of those things I was just sitting there staring like, there's got to be a
Yep.
way I can pull that nuclei out of there.
Yep. I want to talk about this too. I have gone through 5 transfers on some Toke monos. I had 4, and I kept them all because I want to learn over time what these monos look like. So I got like a 3-month-old mono. I got like a mono from I think back in April somewhere, and so nothing had pinned, nothing had changed except for my M4. I had one plate. It was my second oldest plate when all of a sudden it started nodding and then formed little blobs on it. I was like, okay, that's obviously not a mono. But when I scope my newer stuff, it's all monos. And so at first I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? But the thing is, if what you're transferring off that monokaryotic growth, if the piece you transfer is only haploid,
Mm.
you're good. But you could have missed one tiny spot. And so what I'm learning is it does pay to keep some of these and pay attention. And you're really
Mhm.
only as good as your recent, microscope check-in on those monos. So let's talk about that. And we can also, you
Mhm.
brought up some morphology of mycelial growth, which I think the more monos I look at, the more I'm almost
Oh,
like,
the
man, I
90
almost don't
degree
have to
thing.
look for clamps anymore.
Yeah, yes.
Because you're really as long as you're
It looks
consistently
different.
pulling from the leading edge growth,
Mhm.
you can almost tell immediately by how it looks.
Yeah, and also under the scope, I think if you're talking about like the mycelium, it's thinner and it seems to be branched at 90 degrees. But yeah, we can
It
talk about
is.
that
Yes.
later. We can get
Yeah.
and the macro morphology. I know that's like taboo to talk about. Like you can't tell
Yeah.
without a microscope. It's to be after you get some experience, you can pretty much be like, that's a mono.
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
I get,
Yeah,
it
so
goes
we'll
back
do
to
that.
that.
I'll pull a bunch. You pull a bunch of your plates. I'll pull a bunch of mine, and we can actually show like, okay, here's what a mono looks like 4 months old. Here's what a mono looks like brand new, and we
Yeah,
can do some of
that's
that because I think it's like with the microscope, right? Everybody goes, "What? I'm gonna buy a microscope. What's the tip?" There's the tip is to lift it up so you're not crouching down over it. The tip is to get comfortable. The tip is to take some breaks, but
yeah.
it's like, how do you get good at basketball? Get on a goddamn court and shoot some hoops. That's how you're going to get good with the scope. You just got to play
Yeah,
time.
it's hard at
Yeah.
first. I spent hundreds of thousands of hours and it still like is painful for me.
Oh,
But
yeah. And to
when
be
you do,
meticulous, to look at, to
yeah,
go, okay, I took one transfer and I didn't see any clamps there. Do I just say cool, no clamps, or do I grab one other and take a look somewhere else on the other side of the plate? Have I assessed the macromorphology of the culture and said, okay, there seems to be maybe two distinct morphologies. I'm going to take a sample from both and make sure that there's not the beginnings of some clamp formation, and because
just to
I
feel better, just feel
all those
better about you.
things. Yeah,
Because you're
you
gonna
never
do a
know.
lot of work after that, so you might as well take that 5 or 10 minutes to
Oh yeah.
actually double check it. But I saw you do squash mounts, right? I see a lot of people doing this thing with
I'm
Scotch tape still. I
I
do
have
not.
never done the Scotch tape, but I will do. Um, so I try to. I got a little cutting technique where, depending upon the consistency of my agar, where I'm taking it, sometimes I can slice under. Like I make 3 cuts and then I
Yeah,
slice the last cut. If I
yeah,
can get it pretty flat to where I can be on my 40x and I can actually see it without it messing around with them too much. Um, I like doing that, but the whole thing is real soon you figure out that the focus, the field of focus
that's
at
the
the higher
problem.
X's, I mean, you're never seeing more than but like a little band of the growth and focus. So I smash mount most of my stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do like all mine. I smash them. Just
Yeah. Now if I get some lead, so if I'm scoping something where it grew all the way to the edge, the minute it grows all the way to the edge, then it starts growing back in all different ways, and it gets very complex with how the mycelium kind of forms all these branches. But if you get some fresh leading edge growth, I don't always have to smash the piece of agar down. But man, you know, everybody's smashing, right? All the pros. They just want a consistent field of view. They want to be able to
yeah.
move around the slide and
Well,
yeah.
the main thing is you're going to contaminate the culture if you're getting in there with Scotch tape. That's why I don't understand. If you take Scotch tape and
Oh
put
no,
it
I
on
think
the,
they're taking a transfer out, putting the
oh,
yeah, I'm not
oh, I thought
one
they were.
time I tried to pour thin plates and actually look at the whole thing just under the ah that's not worth
Nah,
it.
just the
It's not worth
squash
it.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the squat. When I worked in the lab, I had four colleagues, and then Ron Peterson. Everything was squash mounts.
Yeah.
Although occasionally for some things could look up. You could look with the 40, so it's 400x, and you
Hmm.
could. But it's more reliable to do a squash mount. It's just a lot easier too.
I'm
You
with
don't
you.
have to
Yeah.
sit there and play around with the focal thing and up and down.
Yeah, because the more scope time you're getting, the more you don't want to fart around, and
Yeah.
the move and the stage around gets real old real fast. You're just trying to get in. I'm for the most part, if you're taking your transfers from the leading edge, um, it doesn't even take hardly a second to find a clamp if there's a clamp,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and it really doesn't like it, you find them pretty quick to get like just the perfect angle so you can really see the septum is right in between the hump and all
Yeah.
that. Sure, maybe that takes a second, but the real confusion, it took me a minute to figure this out, is a new branching hyphae. It's easy in the beginning to get confused that, oh, is that a clamp or is that a new
Hmm.
branch? But man, once you see the clamps regularly, you
You
know,
get better at it
it's a
for sure.
it's a hump, and that hump's diameter is similar
Hmm.
to the diameter of the adjacent hyphae. So there's just like some structural things that the more you see, the more you can tell real quick. Whereas the new hyphal tip growth, it's tapered just a touch on the end.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't look anything like a clamp, but in
And
the
it'll be a
beginning, you
different
don't know.
contrast to one of them. Generally, the older hyphae will be like before the septa, it'll be or the septum, it'll be like darker, more
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
prismatic kind of
All
thing. And
those
the new,
things that until you just, I mean, we could do exhaustive videos giving examples and
you gotta
talking
do
about
it.
it and all that.
Yeah.
You really honestly gotta do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Glad to have you back. Got lots
it's
to
good to
talk
be back.
about. We only just barely touched the surface, but that's
I
okay.
know.
It's okay. It's okay.
I only got 2 more pages to go here.
It'll never it's like my to-do list. It's never gonna get smaller.
Yeah, it's fun though because every few weeks I'm like, wow, I think I don't really have anything, and then I'm like, oh wait, you will never. And these people, the noobs or whatever you want to call them, when they're like, yeah, like this is easy.
Oh, I know, dude.
Like, what? You have no clue, man.
Yeah.
No clue.
Yeah.
They usually come from the cannabis world, and they're like, I could grow weed, so I can grow mushrooms.
I mean, that's like if you were a doctor going, I can be a doctor, I can be a lawyer. I mean, maybe, but you doesn't mean you are one. You got to go through that whole process now again. Just success in one field doesn't specifically equate to success in another. I mean, capacity to accomplish something and whatnot does suggest that your odds should be better if you have grown really successfully, learned how to advance cultivation practices of cannabis. Theoretically, then you should have the capacity to learn, but you will have to go through that learning process in this this kingdom of organism. It's not plant, so you're gonna have to learn new things. I don't think you have an advantage over necessarily over somebody else. In fact, I see there are times when it's the opposite, where you make some assumptions, because again, foundationally, plants and fungi are not remotely the same. Just because we put them in tents, the same tents, doesn't mean they're the same stuff.
That's what I thought. That's what I think. People are gonna, in the tent thing, they're gonna be trying to give me advice for their cannabis grows for my mushroom tent, and I'm gonna have to quietly and nicely be like, "This isn't cannabis."
Right.
Like, I don't need an 8-inch inline duct fan and 14 changes of air every day. Like, I don't need that. Like,
literally, don't need it.
Well, those people that start off good, I'd say it, they're inevitably going to have a horribly crushing defeat. And the people that start out with all the trouble and eventually learn from their mistakes, at some point they'll be like, wow.
Yeah.
It's so much more gratifying when you figure out and you get it and you're like, wow. Then you get comfortable and then it fucks up again.
Well, I think if you screw up in the beginning, it's a great litmus test for are you in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
Whereas if you are initially lucky, and I mean, I can get into reasons why I think that a lot of people tend to start out lucky and then have problems later. But if that happens, I think it wounds the grower more, right? It hurts more to be like, because you had your Instagram post of look at me out of the gate, bro. I'm killing it, blah, 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 right? And then all of a sudden you don't hear from him for a while and you're like, oh, where'd that guy go? Oh, that guy's going through the school of hard knocks right now. Okay. Right.
Yeah, all of a sudden he's got a pressure cooker for sale.
Yeah, and man, when you're a vendor, right, and all of a sudden you've made a bunch of orders. I mean, we're gonna have Dirty South Myco back on. He's gonna talk about this. Things are going good. You scale up. You hire people. People are not you.
Oh.
People are never you. Unless you are literally splitting your business 50-50, that guy is not gonna work as hard as you, and you're gonna really have to keep an eye on him and learn the hard way. And now you got 80 people waiting for their orders, and your whole grow is gone. You got to start all over. And so, yeah, man, that's a hard pill to swallow right there. A lot of people just go, okay, I'm just going to dip out. I tried, Nope. I'm done.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of character, a lot of tenacity to go, I'm sorry, I screwed up big time. I'm doing my best to make it up to you. And I've seen a lot of people be in that situation and not ever make it right. And, from what I hear, he is slowly but surely making it right for everybody. So we're going to have him back on to talk about that and what that's like. But that's that classic. I almost feel bad if they're doing real good out of the gate, because it's like, man, there's no lessons learned yet.
Yeah. I do too. I feel like it's like, wow, I feel they're gonna have a rude awakening at some
Right.
point. It's
It's
just
like if you've never played basketball and somebody gives you basketball and they go, yeah, just put it in the hoop. And you just go and you throw it and it goes in the hoop. And then you go, look at me. I'm a natural talent. I'm destined to do this. Look at that. My first shot, I made it. And then LeBron James comes out and he says, all right, we're going to shoot 30 of these. Let's see who makes more. And then you get into consistency and technique. And yeah, that's what it's all about. It's all about
yeah, for sure.
learning how to handle those defeats, how
Yes.
to right size
And getting back up. Get
getting
back
back up.
up. That's the thing. You just got to keep getting back up. I have to encourage, I mean, my friend, she's been doing it for like 13 years, and I gotta, like, every couple months, she's like, I'm gonna quit. I'm like, no, you're not.
Right.
No, here's another, like, 40 pounds of spawn. You're not
Yeah.
quitting.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're the only one I can talk to and complain about. You can't quit.
Keep it going for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, in general, that's everything, right? I mean, man, that's how jobs and partners are. It's easy to go, I don't like this one anymore. I want a new one. But you can go through that same journey with, doesn't matter what job you have. Oh, really? You think there's a dream job where what did somebody on Instagram tell you? When you find your true calling, you never work a day in your life? No, not true, man. Lies. You might enjoy it a little bit more. But like if you win the lottery every day, the first time's amazing. The 100th time you've won the lottery, once you just got all the money in the world anyway, it's not going to feel as good. Elon Musk's first billion probably felt great. His like 180th billion, he probably barely even celebrates that shit anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's how human beings are. Repeated positive experiences have diminished dopamine effects.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Yeah, chasing the dragon.
It's the opposite for negative things. The worse shit gets, right? The first billion Elon Musk loses hurts. The second billion hurts more. The third billion hurts even more. And as it all starts slipping away, it gets worse and worse. And then they kill themselves. That's what happens. That's how people are in life, right? You 1-2 punch. You just get hit, you get knocked down. I see this all the time in some of the people, they're trying their best. They get knocked down. They get back up. They get knocked down again. Everybody has got the amount of times you can get knocked down before you just go, fuck it, I'll just stay down here now.
Yeah, that's it. It's hard sometimes.
Very, very unfortunate. I've been close. Luckily, I keep getting back on the horse. Fall 7 times, stand up 8. That's that's all you got to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man. Well, on that very depressing note. Yeah. But hey, man, if you guys are out there struggling, psilocybin, it's not going to cure you. It's not going to make the world perfect. It's probably going to help you, though.
For sure.
I mean, every day, a lot of people are using it just for antidepressant. They're using it for anti-inflammatory properties. They're using it for periods of joy. It is therapeutic to use it recreationally as long as you're not being crazy about it. Just know a lot of people it's helping out. So if you're here and you're new and you're giving it a go, I hope it goes well for you. And then guys like Ed just can't stop doing it. I'm sure in another 30 years, I'll be the same. I'll be Ed just going, well, 40 years ago when I was, are you guys still doing that stupid bag tech? Are you guys still talking about dehydrators?
Yeah. It is only a matter of time before I move up to an 8x8 tent. I'm going to try to get sponsored by Mars Hydro.
There you go. Yeah. I bought a gorilla tent just because, man, I am so neurotic about reviews, and I'm sitting here going, I'm going to pay $200 for something that's going to fall apart in 6 months, or I can spend $400 on something that falls apart in 4 years.
Oh
I think
yeah.
I'm gonna spend a little bit more money.
They don't sell the gorilla ones here. That's the only
Yeah.
reason. They only have Mars Hydro, and I don't even think they sell the AC Infinity. They
Uh,
it's all my they a lot of the things here they get like one brand. It's like
right.
Nike or they get
Right.
in and like they just saturate
And
the
they
market.
own it. Yeah.
Yeah, they pretty much
Now,
own it.
all I know, it's either about, so with cannabis, a big deal was light leak. That's kind of not a big deal for us. So that's inconsequential, but it's always the zippers. So just be real nice to your zippers. Don't get, overzealous. Don't be aggressive with them.
That's why I was impressed. The Mars Hydro, man, I had to put it up and you might have saw part of the video. I was not gentle to the zippers at all.
Right. But be
I
gentle. I'm gonna sound like my dad. There's only just so many zips that thing has in it.
yeah, it's
No
true.
matter how good it is. Just be
That's
just
true,
gentle
for
with
sure.
it.
Yeah, I wouldn't put like racquetball in there or
'Cause-
anything.
Oh man, it's like you ever buy like a zip up jacket and then the zipper breaks and you're like, fuck, I guess I got to throw this jacket out now.
Yeah,
Can't zip
exactly.
it up.
He's a nice jacket, dude.
All right, dude. Thank you so much for being on. We'll see you again shortly.
right, man.
Can't wait to see what you're up to next.
Oh yeah. Oh, CK. My friend got a white fruit from a CKB
I saw
tub
that.
today.
Oh, today.
Oh,
I
today.
thought you got one.
No, oh, that was
Oh,
the
that's
normal fruit from the Diamond
okay.
Cross. This was just a CKB tub, and she got a white fruit from it, and I don't know why. Lots of stuff going on with those blobs, man.
That's great. That's awesome. Cool. Well, we'll talk about that. I actually just discovered, you sent me a CKB cross with, I forget what it was.
B-, I think.
B-, yeah.
Or B negative
So
or whatever.
I try not to be, Ed. So, we'll do B-. I don't like B-s either. I like A+, but we'll stick with, we'll stay true. Yeah, so I got to get those out to some people. I'm slacking a little bit, but yeah, the grand design's going good. Getting a lot of people. It took a minute. We got going. I think in my head, I thought instantly I just start seeing pictures of fruit and flushes all the time. But life doesn't work that way. So,
Takes
but we're
time.
we're starting
A
to
lot of
see it
time.
now. Yeah, we're starting to see stuff, and we're moving into next filial generations on a lot of stuff. So, it'd be good to see how that keeps going. Anyway,
Time.
all right, dude. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
See y'all later.
All right, guys. Back in the house. Ed Grand, PhD. I had a good time. I mean, we talked about some stuff. Got a lot more stuff to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Hope you got something out of it. Hope it was worth your time. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Tell people about the show. If you had a question or a comment you want to make it in the comments below. Appreciate it. And until next week, I hope you guys grow some mushrooms.